right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Carey with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by now our very frequent recurring guest, Bazed Lit Analyzer. How you doing, sir?
Yo, what's up? Good to see you again. Thank you so much for having me again. Love being here. Thank you, sir. This is great. We always have a good time, and I think this is going to be a pretty fun one.
I think it is too, man. Last time. We did Christmas movies last time, and we were talking about doing some of the more contemporary AI films, and I was just scrolling through it. I saw a reference to the Terminator. I was like, dude, me and Baze need to do a breakdown of Terminator 2 specifically, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. We do realize there's, 5 or 6 of them total, or 5, I think. Mm-hmm. And then they had the whole Sarah Connor television series. But I wanted to really focus on the second one, Judgment Day, talking more about Skynet, it becoming sentient, this whole thing. And really, that was the blockbuster hit. I mean, none of them kind of lived up to Terminator 2.
Yeah, this is not only the blockbuster of the Terminator movies, this is the blockbuster of all time. This is one of the biggest movies of all time. Biggest movie of 1991. Great year for everything. And this is one of the cornerstone movies of, dystopia, and then, the apocalyptic stuff plays into the movie. So a kind of a post-apocalyptic dystopia, but it's it's sort of endlessly revelatory, and there's a lot that we can get from this movie, so it's a good choice.
Yeah, and I thought too, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of dive into this film was, again, the idea of a sentient AI, Judgment Day, the sort of apocalyptic end, and something I've reiterated ad nauseum basically on this channel is that I believe that the Antichrist will be a form of, artificially enhanced human being, and that the sentience of the machine world, or the AI, I think that's a sort of inverted incarnation of Satan himself. And so I don't think, and we can get into this, theories about strong AI, weak AI. I don't believe in the possibility of strong AI unless there is an entity with a will, i.e. Satan, who then sort of inhabits this as its own cybernetic skeleton.
Yeah. This is definitely a movie with a strong spiritual or element. I mean, it's called Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and so it's about the end of the world. And obviously, the main way that they play that, at least on the surface level, on the literal level, is an actual thermonuclear annihilation, which is like right at the beginning of the film. But there are obviously, there's heavy symbolism in the movie, and there's just a lot to be gleaned from this. So,
in right now, with all the tanks being sent over to Ukraine, we're hearing the rhetoric, and again, however you feel about the war, we don't have to get into that, but certainly the rhetoric of nuclear war, the Russia-American thing. I mean, it's the whole Cold War rhetoric seems like it's sort of reigniting right now, and that plays a role in this film as well.
Yes, there's this, and we'll get to this, but just to mention at the beginning, there is a scene in this, which is pretty interesting when you rewatch it, especially as an adult, you rewatch it, and there's a scene where all three of the characters, Sarah Connor, John Connor, and the Terminator are in the car, and he's giving the whole history of Skynet, and we learn that the reason that Skynet exists is because when they tried to pull the kill switch on Skynet, it retaliated by sending its nukes to Russia.
Right.
And this was made in 1991. And John Connor says, Russia, I thought they were our friends now. And Arnie replies and says, yes, but, they're the only ones capable of retaliating, in the sense that a full, nuclear retaliation that would cause the annihilation, leading to what Skynet wants. And so I found that pretty interesting, especially just like you said, in light of what's happening now.
Right. And so before we even dive into the film, one of the things that I wanted to do was just hit on, again, because the theme of today is we wanted to talk about the movie The Terminator. We want to talk maybe generally about artificial intelligence, the state of that. We can get into ChatGPT, the sort of rhetoric right now in society regarding that. And then Judgment Day, maybe, again, how that all comes together. Because it's like this movie allows us to bring all three of these things together. And so I wanted to first say, what is Judgment Day from an Orthodox Christian perspective? What is Judgment Day? And Judgment Day is when each person will be judged by God for their deeds, words, and thoughts. Okay, and this is going to be led up to this, the second coming, by widespread suffering, turmoil, deception. It's going to test the faith of those who believe in Christ. This period is going to be known as the end times, the tribulation. It's going to be characterized by natural disasters and plagues, political and military conflicts, economic instability and poverty, moral decay and increased sinfulness, false teachings and the deception of the church, and then persecution of Christians and other faithful people. And so those then who sort of hold out through this period are going to be, in a way, the chosen ones. You know, they're going to be the true Christians, and then everyone who's ever died is going to be judged at this second judgment on Judgment Day. And so again, so biblically, theologically speaking, we believe that whatever Judgment Day, you know, how we get to Judgment Day, we have to pass through natural disasters and plagues, political, military conflicts, economic instability, extreme poverty worldwide, moral decay, debauchery everywhere, the church falling apart and teaching false things, and then again, a general persecution. And so obviously some people think we're already entering that. Could be, again, I'll let the church say that, but you know, this movie in a way sort of inverts or uses aspects of the sort of Christian understanding. And even Arnie being this sort of Terminator figure, he's also a salvific figure from the future, right? From the judgment itself, right? So he's already, you see sort of Christological motifs and stuff wrapped around this. You know, I was reading Revelation 20 and 21, and even it talked about how in the New Jerusalem there'll be no more crying, and crying is an aspect that is brought up in this movie, where Arnold at the end wipes the tears of John Connor and then says, "Oh, now I understand why you cry." Well, even in the book of Revelation, it talks about how crying and us being sort of stressed by that emotional density of living in the world, the New Jerusalem won't have that, because it will be a sort of paradise, you know, even better than the Edenic state. So I just wanted to put that out there before we start getting into the movie, because that way people can have that in mind as we sort of talk about everything.
Yeah, that was amazing. I love just for personal reasons, I love that you brought up, you know, that God will wipe away every tear from your eyes. And that, like, that is a major part in this. What is wrong with your eyes? Right. and not to mention the fact that the Terminator coming from the future, both of them enter the world kind of newborn. You know, they both enter naked. And then the bad guy, the T-1000, descends into the abyss at the end of the film. He descends into a lake.
It is like a lake of fire. That's another thing. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Exactly.
It's a literal lake of fire. And also, the thing I've always found striking is his death, his termination, because he shows Legion. He shows all of the faces of the people that he's inhabited or that he's taken over.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and when you listen to the sound in the film, when that happens, there's clearly a screeching demon sound, and then they play all of the voices of the different characters. So it's definitely, you know, I think that there's definitely a heavy allegorical or at least, you know, at least in the subtext of the film, at the very least, there is some sort of spiritual dimension to this. So,
I also, before we get straight into it, because that's where I want to turn it over to you here in a sec, I want to give a special shout out to one of our sisters in the community here, Alexandra Union. Shout out to you and your husband. I just received a beautiful card, a beautiful 5 day long candle and this beautiful St. Patrick of Ireland icon. And I just want to tell her major thank you to you and your husband for the incredible gifts. And so I just wanted to give her a special shout out. I told her that I would, just because I just got it today, literally like an hour before tonight's stream. So now with that being said, general take. So as we normally do, I was going to go through sort of the chronology of the plot itself. But before we even get into that, takes, you want to talk about the director, James Cameron, the role of this movie. You talked about this was the blockbuster of all blockbusters. Maybe provide a little bit of frame for Terminator 2 and what we're getting ready to get into before we get into the chronology of the plot itself.
Yeah. Let me give some of the film nerd stuff about this movie, okay? And before I do that, by the way, make sure you smash that like on this video, okay, on this stream. Make sure that you if you want to do a sponsored stream, okay, send $100 to our homeboy here, David Patrick Harry, and give him some ideas for things to cover. He's not obligated to do the things that you want, okay, but give him some ideas, and he'll cover them, and he will put some serious time into it, some serious research. Our man can do some research.
Bazed, you and Rachel are the two most requested, and maybe Father Deacon, Dr. Ananias, is that, you got to do monthly streams with these people, because we do. But everybody loves when we get on here and just kind of ramble about films, and your knowledge of movies and just all of cinema, generally speaking, is incredible. So take it away. Give us the nerd intro here.
I appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who says that. I appreciate that. I love being here. All right, so the movie was released in 1991. It was released July 3rd, 1991. Now, the reason I remember this is because I was 10 years old, and I was at a swim meet the night that it was released, and I was a swimmer, okay? And I challenge anybody
breaststroke?
No.
What was your
Oh, no. I'm butterfly freestyle. I'm a freestyle anchor, butterfly, and backstroke.
Oh, okay.
Serious swimmer. I'm not kidding. Yeah, I'm that's my sport. Anyway, but I was at a swim meet, and I really wanted to leave in time to go, get my parents to take my friends and I to Terminator 2 that night, because it came out. And we were obsessed with this movie at the time, because the Guns N' Roses single "You Could Be Mine" came out 2 weeks ahead of that in June, and the music video on MTV had Arnie in the music video. And at the end of it, if you have seen it, or if you were alive at the time, he goes through the crowd, and at the end, Guns N' Roses walks out, and he scans each of them, and when he gets up to Axl, it says "waste of ammo," and they kind of smile at each other, and it was the coolest thing in the world for a 10-year-old. Okay. So the movie came out July 3rd, 1991. It was huge. It was the highest grossing film of 1991. I think it's the third, at least a few years ago, it was the third highest grossing film of all time. It was a massive worldwide blockbuster. And we're going to get into some of the reasons for that, but this is Jim Cameron. This is peak Jim Cameron. Terminator was released in 1984, and the entire budget for Terminator 1 was the cost of the Judgment Day sequence in Terminator 2. So just one 30-second shot in this film is the entire budget. This is one of the first, I think it's the first budget to be $100 million. At least that's what they say. I've doubts about that, as far as money laundering and issues go with that, but whatever. This was also peak Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is his, he was already a huge star, but this is the absolute peak. This is when he was at his most famous. He was total King of the Chads in 1991, and so it was a gigantic blockbuster. And of course there are spin-offs and all that, and they just they downgrade. I will say that Terminator Salvation is probably is the only one that I think is worth anything. It's kind of revelatory. It's got Christian Bale in it, but Linda Hamilton is the co-star of this film. She's she's made to be kind of really the true protagonist in this, and that plays into issues about femininity and feminine power in the film, and I'm sure we'll get into that. She was married to Jim Cameron at the time. Edward Furlong.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she's married. She was married. Well, he was married to Catherine Bigelow, who Catherine Bigelow directed Point Break, the best movie of all time. Um, and and she won the Oscar for Hurt Locker, and then she did Zero Dark 30, which is of course like a another CIA propaganda movie. But Linda Hamilton was with Jim Cameron. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. But Edward Furlong is interesting because his own life sort of mirrored the life that he plays for John Connor, young John Connor in this film. He was a runaway himself. He did have foster parents, but he was raised by his aunt and uncle. He, has had of course, former child star, serious problems ever since then. But he was for a minute, he was pretty, he's pretty big. He was in Pet Sematary, and then he was in a great movie called Brain Scan, which is an amazing movie for a 13-year-old in 1993. It was an awesome movie.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's that one's about virtual reality and gaming, and demonic forces through gaming, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, a great synth score. Anyway, so the movie is interesting because number one, it's aged really well. And that's because of the time that they put in with all of the kind of, the CGI sort of really in my opinion, kind of peaked with this movie. It kind of started and ended with this movie. It got ridiculous after that. And in this movie, it works because it's kind of campy, and you have a sense of, you suspend your disbelief when you're watching the liquid metal come together.
Right.
But it still works. And it's done really well. And the thing that is really, some of the things that are pretty subtle about this movie that are really interesting are that number one, the bad guy is a cop. Okay. He comes back and they sort of flip they flip the normal way of things. And that's because they do a good job of characterization in the movie where they just happen to appear when they come through the time portal or whatever. And the first place that Arnold sees is the biker bar. So, of course, he becomes the biker.
Right.
And that's interesting because he's dressed as a kind of, Hell's Angel, societal bad guy. Right. He's leather clad. He's all in black. He's the man in black. And that's supposed to be because in the first Terminator, he's the Terminator. He's the villain.
Exactly. They flip his whole entire character.
Yeah, and they have to flip it so that, number one, the characters will believe, looking at him, that he's bad. But he has to be bad enough, especially to Sarah Connor when she first sees him. She has to be aware, even just from the outset, before looking at his face, that this is a bad guy walking in. But one of the things that does is, because of the heart in the movie, I read one analysis, and it was about how, pretty interesting, about how he is the T-800. He's like the Tin Man. He's the Tin Man, and he gets his heart.
Oh.
So he has a heart in the movie because he doesn't literally have a heart. But the way, and you're going to talk about this, I know, that he ends up kind of taking the place of the father figure.
Right.
And Sarah Connor has a really interesting monologue about this, which is, the other thing about the film that's great is that Jim Cameron's dialogue is often pretty atrocious especially in his latter movies, like in Titanic, and But in this movie, they what they do carefully is that they sew up the plot holes, but not in an expository way, in a way where we in the moment where the plot holes are sealed up, we're thinking, this is a plot hole. How are they going to fix this? And then they seal it with the dialogue. So they do a good job of that. They also, there's a good dichotomy between it's a movie for older people and it's clearly a movie for younger people. It was made for people my age when it came out,
right?
Because Edward Furlong is about my age, a little older, but he's about my age. And the fact that he is instantly, he's a bad kid, he's a troublemaker, but he's likable because he's got a friend. He does kind of cool, badass things, right. And he's got this dirt bike, which is so awesome.
I remember when I was a kid, the dirt bike was the seller. I was like, "Oh man,
yes,
riding around
so
town,
cool.
Yeah,
yes,
had
so
money
cool.
for the
even
arcade."
Now, for real, even now when I see somebody on a dirt bike like that, I automatically think yeah, it's so cool. I love that. But what's interesting is the way that the dirt bike gets run over by the tractor trailer and then taken out. He gets picked up and put on the hog. He put on the Harley.
Right.
So it's like he's got this kind of the way that the sound of the dirt bike, it sounds like a soprano.
Oh, okay.
It's whiny like a child. And then the sound of the motorcycle is like a grown man's voice. It's a deep voice, it's a deep bass.
Rumble.
And yeah, and he gets taken over by Arnie, who saves him. And then the bad guy, of course, where he appears is a cop pulls up, and so he takes on the garb of the police officer. And so what's interesting here is that the cops throughout the film, and I'm going to get into this later, but the cops are clearly seen. It's more subtle than clear, but they are trying to escape the cops.
Right.
And bad guy is part of the cops, and yet they do kind of a clever thing where, like, when they kill the cops, when he shoots them in the kneecaps. So it's like the movie makes them the villain, but it doesn't eliminate them.
Right.
Which is interesting. And so I think that that there are some the fight sequences and all of that is interesting in the film. But again, it's like, and I know you're going to get into this, but like the tagline, when I think of this film, the thing I think of is her carving "No Fate" into the picnic table, because the movie is about what is fate. Are we victims of some sort of domino theory of butterfly effect, time traveling fate, or do we have responsibility for our own actions? Do we have free will and try and take care of the people that we love and self-sacrifice regardless of the circumstances?
And that point on the no fate, I think, is that is the linchpin that then brings this whole Skynet, this sort of cybernetic AI, Judgment Day, apocalyptic thing. It kind of builds a bridge over into a sort of Christian understanding as we move into Judgment Day, the end times, the tribulation, because it is then even that one's all about how there is no fate, and it's characterized by what we do in the present moment dictates the future, which in a way is eternity itself. And so this idea of how we have so much power in the present moment and our decisions are important, and how are we going to respond to the evils of the world? This one's clearly Skynet, clearly the cybernetic, artificial robotic reality that's at hand. And when you're talking about the police, I also noticed that and think that again, in a way, it's true, because I don't want to, use a cliche reference in regards to the Matrix, but the police are, in a sense, part of this matrix at hand. And we can see how, look at the coup in 2020 and how, unless you were in a more conservative, traditional place in the United States, in a lot of places, the police went from protecting people to actually enforcing mask mandates and just nonsense, demonstrating that they will do what the program says for them to do. How many of the police are actually autonomous? How many people are actually choosing to make the right decision, because what they do now actually does affect the future and what's going to happen? And so in a way, then the police are these sort of clueless entities, but at the same time, this, the T-1000 is then using this idea, and the whole archetype's flipped, because he's going after the biker, he's going after the rebellious child, but then also that's who we're rooting for, and we're totally rooting against the official entities.
Yes. It's interesting also that you bring up the Matrix, because Neo, is the chosen one. This is like one of the three like constant tropes that we see in movies now. In my opinion, like movies now, you get like three things. You either get some form of cannibalism, or you get the most dangerous game, or you get a Gnostic overview. Jay's talked about this so much, that movies like are broken into this sort of Gnostic viewpoint where creation is broken. We have to get rid of everything and start over, And what's interesting in this one is that the chosen one, John Connor, is supposed to be the chosen one. He's going to be the general that leads the thing in the future. But when you were talking about self-sacrifice, it's interesting that when they bust her out of the psychiatric institute, she says, "How could you be so stupid? Like, everything I've taught you And there's a backstory to that in the film, which is great. But she says, how could you, everything that I've taught you, all this stuff about evasion tactics and, and situational awareness and getting by, she taught him how to hack the ATM machine, and she teaches him all this stuff about weapons. He knows, he's there reloading the pistol. He's putting the shells in the shotgun. He knows what to do. But she says, how could you be so stupid? And he says, Mom, I had to come rescue you. I love you. And she's like, yeah, but you can't do that. You're more important than me. Right. And he doesn't, he's too young to understand this, but he gets it. But it's like you kind of you feel like in his mind, what he's thinking is none of that really matters. If I can't like care about the ones that I love, if I have to sacrifice you, then none of that matters. I have to like take care of the things that I love right now.
And that relates to his rebelliousness. Is one of the things I want to talk about, is how he was so rebellious, again, the foster parents, all that, but it's the absence of paternal families and the family structure. And so once the Terminator comes, now there's an orientation of what to do, what not to do, how he moves through it, and then rescuing his mother. Again, a child needs his mom. And you see how he becomes not this rebellious child, but a kid who desperately loves his mother and wants to protect his mother. And so you see this flip there that, again, I think is very apropos when we talk about the 21st century and sort of the attacks on the nuclear family and all this, and how kids wind up rebellious, where now the culture itself sort of advocates for the child to become that figure.
It's funny. One of his best lines in the movie is, "She's not my mom, Todd."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny that even that scene is pretty clever, because Todd at first seems like the typical, he's like this kind of schlub, lazy boomer dad or whatever, and he's got the baseball like shirt on or whatever, and he's sitting there
TV, drinking, smoking,
watching TV. Yeah, get out of the way. I'm trying to watch the game, and it's the middle of the day. But the foster mother is like, you need to get in there and clean your room. Okay, go clean your room. He needs to get in there and clean his room. Can you do something about this, Todd? And he's like, now. But then he gets up and he goes and he tries to, exert some. It's interesting because they're not the typical foster parents that you see or at least hear about truthfully, which is, there's a lot of creeper stuff.
Yeah, but
they tend to, they actually seem to be fairly normal in a way. But then of course they are like when the T-1000 shows up at the house and he's like, I'm looking for, your son. And Todd says, like, can you tell me what this is about? Is there a problem? And they're very calm. They're very like sort of objective, and they seem, fairly normal. So they kind of flip that a little bit. Whereas, his mother in real life in the real life of the movie is seen as a total schizoidal, she's on what is it that they put her on? Thorazine. She's a Thorazine case, right, at the Psychiatric Institute. Right. Of course, it turns out that he says, wow, everything my mom said was true.
Right.
And now I believe her, which is another thing that occurs in the film, how these people's like worldviews and lives are flipped completely upside down. And in a moment, they're like, well, I'm going along with it now. This actually does make sense. And we were talking earlier about Miles Dyson and how he does that in the film.
Right. Well, we'll get to that once we start moving through the plot, but even the mother, Sarah Connor, being in the psych ward, how I wanted to relate that even back to the state of the world right now is those who are skeptical about the jibby jabs, about, an AI system, about the digital currencies. Oh, you guys are crazy conspiracy theorists, right? And so we can see the psych ward is really just a metaphor for the sort of relegation of those who are already seeing how the future is going to lay itself out based on what we're doing right now in the world. And so Sarah Connor in a way is all of us who are trying to be and take preventative steps towards where all this is going to lead to naturally, if you just sort of follow the logic and where it's all going to go. So Anything general, because we can move through the actual plot of the movie and start bringing up just scene by scene, real specific aspects that we wanted to highlight.
Let's get into the plot, because a lot of this comes out as we sort of dissect and explicate some of the film.
Okay, so let me say this right before we get to Arnold sort of coming down from quote unquote heaven, so to speak. Again, they're time travelers, him and T-1000. But the whole setting is that it's in 2029, Earth is a wasteland dominated by the war between the malevolent artificial intelligence called Skynet and the human resistance to it. Skynet sends the T-1000, this advanced prototype shape-shifting Terminator made of virtually indestructible liquid metal, back in time to kill the resistance leader, John Connor, who is then only a child. To protect Connor, the resistance sends back a reprogrammed T-800 Terminator, a less advanced metal exoskeleton that is covered in synthetic flesh. And it's the same, again, it's Arnold, and it's the same Terminator from Terminator 1 that was trying to kill Sarah Connor the whole time. And so that's why, again, in the psych ward, she is terrified once she sees him walk through. And it's ironic because John says, oh, I sent you back to save me. So we see that, again, John, the son, sort of uses the same Terminator, the same entity that tried to kill his mother, that she survived, then to be his protector. But from there, let's get into then these opening scenes of the T-1000 becoming the cop and then Arnold becoming the biker.
Yes. Something interesting about sending the T-800 back is that the opening sequence, we see what is it, like the tribulation landscape of, gray and stones and skulls, right? And then we immediately see like the Terminator crushing the skull, right? And then we look, and then it pans up and it's got like the laser cannon. And of course, there's a certain person who's used that clip like a ton. Look, folks, this is the future, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the flying, hovering sort of demon bots.
Yeah.
The hunter killers
sort of drone,
that are
it's sort of massive drone archetype.
They're drones. And what's interesting though about that is that in the first movie, we get that in the future they have a Terminator that is, like you said, it's a flesh-covered endoskeleton of it's a robot,
right?
And that they've sent that back as this sort of titanium or whatever, alloy, killer. But in the second one, what we get is that technology has advanced. It's evolved. It's upgraded, and now they have this liquid metal Terminator. But the good guys have taken on the old technology, right? So they have to win the war by sort of heaping up at least some with the technology. And I find that interesting because this is kind of the thing about like when people are like, yeah, but you are on certain platforms or you have a phone, and it's like, yeah, well, it would be great to live like with none of this stuff and to live in the country, but in the meantime, and trying to make ends meet or whatever and live, and you're living in the world and you have a job, that there is a point like where you have to use some of these. I mean, we're using it right now.
Right. So
it's not inherently evil. It's you use it for what you can, of course.
Right.
So they take this stuff and then they have to use it how they can. And then so we see the war, and then of course then we cut to what you're about to describe, which is the playground in present day, and we see people playing and children, and then we see Sarah Connor. So what happens there?
Well, I wanted to make a point when you're talking about the utility of technology, and this is something I talk about because everybody knows, I'm trying to write a dissertation on transhumanism as a religious orientation, and I always say the same thing about psychedelics is that, the mushroom itself is not inherently evil. Evil as a Christian comes from something with a will. That's the only thing, evil has to come from something with a will. And the problem with psychedelics is your will being into this place and opening yourself up to this spiritual reality in which you can be possessed. technology, this computer doesn't have a will. The idea is that the AI becomes sentient. This is a whole theory called strong AI, which again, I'm very skeptical of. I fall in line with philosopher John Searle and more believe that it can only get better and better forms of weak AI. But we're utilizing the technology right now, and it's in a way, this is how we ourselves as Christians have to take one step into the matrix. Some of us, your role is to go to the hills. Your role is to get off the grid. Your role is to get off this stuff. Some of us, our purpose, our salvational role is actually to have one foot in, trying to tell people to get out. And so I talk about this all the time, that the technology itself is not what's evil. It's the intentions behind it. It's the people creating it. It's the people utilizing it. And then ultimately, I believe how it, as we move towards actual judgment day, I speculate that Satan himself, demonic forces themselves, will literally inhabit the technology. That's when it really becomes, quote unquote, sentient and evil. So I wanted to follow up on exactly what you're saying, is that, we're on here. Yeah, I'm live streaming on YouTube, and I'm making, Google's making money from, us being here doing this stuff. But at the same time, we have to utilize old hat technology, as, we're not on the top echelon of technology right now. And the same things with Chat GPT. These artificial intelligence, I speculate we're all going to have an AI. We're going to have an AI to decipher all the information coming from all the other AIs. And so the Terminator, the T-80, I think is representative of a world we're literally entering, in which we're going to have older forms of artificial intelligence privately, just like your cell phone. We're all going to have our own little AI, just so it can read and tell us and defend us in a way from these larger forms of AI, the AI of the CCP, the AI of globalist people, whoever it is, they're on the echelon of this technology. We are going to have old hat technology, but in a way, we're going to have it just to defend ourselves from the T-1000.
Right. Yeah, great points. Great points. And I think that the next scene is interesting because, especially for, I don't know about anybody else, but for someone my age, this, like, when I think of all of the, boomers will talk about like the get under your desk, right? And, build a bunker in the backyard, because, it's a Cuban Missile Crisis or whatever.
Right.
What I related to when I was a kid is this movie, because this movie is like, it takes the films of the Trinity test site, nuclear tests, and it puts it into like a real life scenario within the film. And so that like had a big impact on my psyche watching this in 1991, because we see this juxtaposition between what it's supposed to say in the worldview in the film is that, everybody is living their life, and you're at one moment you're on the playground with your kids, and you're right outside of LA, and and then the next minute you see a white flash in the sky and it's all over. And that can happen anytime. And maybe that's true. But what's interesting is the juxtaposition between the kind of pure innocence of this. In a way, it's kind of a stretch, but in a way, it's like a garden, right? We have this playground, circular playground, and then we've got there's something beyond in the outside world, and we've got this urban landscape.
A dialect between the innocence versus the sort of nefariousness of the world we inhabit.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that it comes. I've always thought it was like they must have known this as part of their designing of the weapon, that it comes from the sky, and it's a white flash in the sky, and you see a white light, but it's the white vaporizing light of the angel of death.
Yeah, not the
right.
Lord.
Yes, and that we see everything gets vaporized in a second in waves. It's great in the film because what happens is she's walking along, and then she puts her hands up to the fence, and she sees the white flash. Anyone watching knows what that is. And then there's a cut to waves of fire. It goes red. They see red, and there's waves of fire knocking out the entire landscape of Los Angeles. And what's really interesting about this is Cameron took something that was not in the test films that we see. We remember in the nuclear test films, like they put like pigs and animals in cages, and then and did all that stuff. But in this, we see a human being. So we see her up on the fence, and she starts shaking the fence, and then of course she turns to ash, like in a second, and then we see her, her skeleton, and then ash, and then she's screaming, and then it blows away. So it's like humanity is gone. This is what's going to happen, and then of course that dissolves into that's a dream, right? It's a dream. It's weird because it's a dream, but it's also a vision. It's like she's having some sort of metaphysical vision of the future because of what we're going to learn about what she's been through.
Right.
So,
well, you made up when we were talking privately a really interesting point about the biker bar that Arnie's getting ready to go into. So let's start right there in these two scenes. You want to elaborate on that for everybody?
Yeah, this is wild. So this is crazy. So what happens is the next scene we see in present day, and it's very blue. It's like everything's blue, and it's a kind of a blue tinge, and we see like trucks parked in the underpass, kind of like at the beginning of Heat, and then we see the electrical storm, and then next thing we see like everything's burned in the background. The trucks are burned, and we see like a weird like futuristic saucer on the ground. And Arnie, it's interesting because Arnie he's like it's side on shot, and he has no clothes on. He's naked because he's like being born into this new world. He can't wear his clothes because he's going through his time travel or whatever. But it's also weird because he's kind of genuflect. He's both like genuflecting. He's kind of down on one knee, but he's also in like a Rodin thinker pose.
It's the mixture between Atlas with a man that has the world on his back and like Socrates sitting there thinking.
Yes, and he was like, listen, we're going to have this. You're going to have me flexing and posing. Right? Well, I'm going to oil up very good. You got this skinny guy to play the other guy. Yes, make him skinnier. And so he wakes up in the new world or whatever, and then he goes to he's on his mission. So we see from his perspective, when we see the infrared and we see that he's scanning, he goes into a biker bar. He walks in and he confronts the bikers, and they immediately, they're looking at him because we know that he's naked, and the guy like puts the cigar out on him. He does a cigar move and breaks his wrist, and throws another guy out. Another guy stabs him. He breaks it. It's a great scene, right? And he throws the guy through the thing, and then he falls on the oven, on the stove.
The grill.
And he's on the grill,
stove,
and then he
whatever.
He's trying to you're right, on the stove. It's a grill in the back, right? In this Hell's Angels bar, and then he's scanning. But what he's doing there is he's scanning the guys, looking for a body match so he can have clothes, because that's part of his MO. He has to exist. But what is interesting about this, folks? I mean, all that. Everybody's seen all that. But did you know, and you may know this, but did you know that scene was filmed across the street from where Rodney King was beaten by the LAPD, the famous Rodney King event that occurred? But not only that, did you know that it was filmed on the same night? That's
crazy.
That was being filmed while that was happening across the street. It was in March 1991. And what's amazing is that the reason that I read a interview with the guy, his name was George Holloway, maybe, the guy who filmed the Rodney King thing. It's really like the first viral video, right? It's like a proto viral video. He filmed it on a Sony camcorder. Well, the reason that he got the Sony camcorder in the first place was initially because they were filming the Terminator 2 around LA and around his neighborhood. So he wanted to film the filming, which is pretty meta.
Yeah.
To film the filming of the movie to show his friends. So he was there, and then he went home. He saw the helicopter coming down, which is interesting because it's like he saw the helicopter coming down, kind of like you see the hunter killer drones coming down with these Terminators, right, doing this thing, and he took it out and he filmed it.
Right.
So then he took it to the news, and then they sold it and whatever. By the way, it's also weird because that guy, let me make sure my Let me make sure my computer's plugged in first. Sorry. I don't want it to die here. Did you know that? Sorry, y'all. I'm plugging my computer in.
We can't hear you.
Plugging my computer in because I didn't want it to die.
Don't go dying on us.
Yeah. So also it's weird because that guy who filmed all that is the son of a Shell oil executive, and his mother was a German woman from Argentina, like literally.
Oh, so she has Nazi roots.
Very weird, very weird, very weird story. But the other part that's weird is the fact that all of that occurred, and then the riots occurred at the same time. They coincided with the movie's release, and that the bad guys we talked about
was the police.
It was the police in the film. So,
yeah,
crazy. That's bizarre.
Right.
That's all I got for that.
Well, moving on then with those movie scenes, I thought, again, indicative of the sort of police being part of the Matrix system is how once the T-1000, kills the police officer because he has his own sort of, time traveling experience. So then he kills the police officer and then goes in there and starts putting in John Connor into the police records to then find out who's his foster parents. So again, how the police have access to information that, again, the sort of the Matrix itself that we don't have. This leads to, so we see he becomes the police officer, Arnie becomes the biker, Bad to the Bone, that infamous song. Those riffs will forever live in my head. And so he takes off, and now it's the race to John Connor. And so then we find out that John Connor, again, he's with these foster parents, has no respect for them. You see a sort of emasculated man watching television during the day. Then his sort of bossy wife that can't get John to do what they want him to do. And he's on the motorcycle or the dirt bike with his buddy, and they take off with his little scanner machine that they can, hawk $300 from the ATM. And so,
yes,
and so then they head to the arcade, and then this kind of sets the next stage of the movie.
One thing about it's interesting you brought up that when he inhabits the body of this cop essentially right now, and he gets in the police car because of his, the first thing he does is he gets in the car and he looks up John Connor, right? And so he's able to instantly right away get a hit and go to the parents' house. And I think that's interesting because it shows, again, how the storyline, the narrative, and technology has evolved. Because in the first movie, if you remember, there's a pretty long sequence about the Terminator finding Sarah Connor because he has to go through all of the Sarah Connors in the phone book. And so now in this one, it's like, no, we just make him a policeman and he can go right to it. Also, shouts out to the real John Connor in the chat there, who's a good homeboy of all of our channels. One of my homeboys, and he's the real John Connor. So, and the other thing is, you brought up the Bad to the Bone. That I think originally, they wanted that in the film in the scene, and James Cameron was like, "No, this is too. Even for me, James Cameron, this is too hokey."
And then the guy was like,
"Yeah," and then the guy was like, "No, put it in." And what that does is that's interesting because that kind of shows a weird like dichotomy between kind of a boomer music. He's coming out of the boomer bar,
right?
Versus the next scene where we get the also boomer music, but it's Gen X music at the time, which is Guns N' Roses' "You Could Be Mine" is playing on the guy's boombox. And the dude, by the way, folks in the audience who are too young to remember this, the kid who plays John Connor's friend was instantly recognizable to people my age because he played the kid in this show Salute Your Shorts on Nickelodeon, where he played like the bad troublemaker at the camp. And so I remember watching that. We're like, "Oh, that's Salute Your Shorts, dude." And of course, he's got a boombox. He also lies to the cops when they get to the arcade, tries to divert him, for his friend. "Hey, I think I saw him go that way." And the two of them take off, rob the ATM machine, and then go to the arcade. How cool was it being this kid? Like, and he's got this dirt bike. So
yeah,
anyway,
no doubt. So this movie takes place in 1995, Los Angeles. John's mother, Sarah, has been incarcerated at Pescadero State Hospital for her violent, fanatical efforts to prevent Judgment Day, the prophesied events of August 29, 1997, when Skynet will gain sentience, and in response to its creator's attempts to deactivate Skynet, it will instead incite a nuclear holocaust, one by shooting the nuclear arsenal of the United States at Russia, which will then respond by shooting theirs at the United States. And then, Skynet kind of takes care of both hemispheres, if you will. And so John is taken in by foster parents, and he considers Sarah's beliefs to be delusional and resents her efforts to prepare him for his future role, or that is until... Again, the arcade scene where he begins to run from the police officer, and then he runs into Arnie with his box of roses, which turns out to be his famous sort of sawed-off shotgun.
Right. Yes. And it's also interesting that the psychiatric ward, the warden or whatever, is walking along, and he has people observing. And you were talking earlier about sort of making a connection to now, and especially about things like Koof.
Yeah,
where
people
it's
who are believe in conspiracies about the elite and what's going on.
Yeah, and the way that they talk about her is interesting when they're walking down the hall, because he's like, she believes that she's from the future, and she's delusional, and what a kook, and they all laugh at her. So in other words, it's like behind the scenes, and it's like these people they're in their clinical garb, but they are just as judgmental. Judgment Day. They're judging her before they get to her. And then what she does is her first scene, by the way, is we immediately cut to her, and we see her like ripped, right? I mean, she is lean.
Right.
I mean, she is lean as heck.
Yeah.
And she's doing her pull-ups, and she kind of turns around with this like psychotic look on her face. But can you blame her? Right? And then she says, she has a great cut down. She says, "How's your knee, doctor?" And he's like, "Oh, that was nothing," right? And we learned that what does he say that she has? Schizoidal
tendencies.
Yes, and he's put her on Thorazine. Shouts out to Tupac out there. Got me craving Thorazine. And Thorazine is like the thing that the mental patients always are taking, that gives them that glassy-eyed look where they're kind of walking around. But she's not like that, because she's also been, she, as best we know, she knows how to avoid her medications or somehow get, she does the Dr. Lecter. She does the Hannibal Lecter thing of when they have the interview with her later, she like palms the paperclip, and that's how she's able to get out of her restraints.
Right. Yeah, and so I wanted to just reiterate making the connection between the psych ward and the sort of spectacle in which the powers that be try to make those who are more conspiratorial minded about even the state of the world right now, which again, we believe there's an agenda in the future. This one's, again, the movie takes place in 1995, and 1997, 2 years later, is the sentient AI. Those have done their research, read books like this one right here. 2030 seems to be a really important date for a lot of powers that be. And so we are kind of sounding the horn as soon as 2020 happened and we saw the lockdown, and, so many people who were in the know talking about, oh, the stabbies are going to come. There's an agenda. It's not going to be in your favor. There's going to be harmful consequences if you take it. And we're seeing this thing play itself out. And again, even those who are still skeptical about medical practices, maybe medical technologies related to mRNA, again, there's still a sort of a spectacle about those that be, because of the power of Big Pharma and all this stuff. So I just felt like it was so relatable to see Sarah Connor aware of what's going on, total misunderstanding, and then the powers that be are trying to making a spectacle of her and trying to keep her locked in and perceive her as crazy.
Yeah. Shouts out, by the way, I got to give a shouts out to our friend Jay Dyer at Jay's Analysis, who has covered this movie many times. And one of the most notable that I remember, that the homeboys will remember from the old days, I'm not really that old, but was when he covered this, when he covered AI and Skynet is real on Boiler Room. And shouts out to Boiler Room and Hesher out there, because they went into this in depth and also made a connection between Skynet and Starlink. And you can't help but see the same thing happening. But what's interesting is what you just brought up, that this was 2018, and then the coup thing happens, and that again plays into this sort of med establishment that you see in the beginning of this. And of course, Sarah Connor is based enough to be like, they're not listening, and this is BS, and I got to get out of here. And she never plays into it. And then she really uses force to get out of this place.
Yeah.
Right.
And that you could see the sort of feminist archetype there of the empowered woman, right? The woman that, again, if she knows how to handle herself, she can dominate all these men and, throw them around and deal with the powers that be. So there's certainly some feminist narratives there. And we've seen James Cameron now. I mean, he's famous for talking about, since Avatar 2 came out, about how toxic masculinity is. Meanwhile, he makes, the first two Terminators. And in Terminator 2, I mean, Arnold is the epitome, I wouldn't say of toxic masculinity, but certainly of, like you're talking about, the sort of leader of the Chads. He was the bodybuilder. He was the movie star. He was the alpha. And that's certainly deteriorated. We can get into that. I saw there's already a super chat wanting to talk about that. So we'll wait for the super chats to talk about Arnie. Yeah. But
it's interesting that, like, the feminine role that you bring up, because I mean, Cameron did that in Alien 2, right, with Sigourney Weaver.
Right.
But then again, like, he also, the interesting thing is that, like, The Abyss, by the way, The Abyss is a great movie. The Abyss precedes Terminator 2 and has some of the same themes, and also has the kind of liquid metal-esque, alien demon underwater, which is also leads into Avatar and all that stuff. But then in this, what I think is that she is supposed to be the strong, powerful woman and all that stuff, but she also is totally cognizant of the fact that Kyle Reese is not there, right? The dad is not there. And there's a later scene where she sees the strong male figure of Chad Arnie with her son, teaching him things. And she's aware of this, and like she's like okay with it in a way where she says, like, this guy is a robot. Is this the way it's going to be, though? Is this the way that, like, this guy is soulless and stuff? But is he the strong male figure?
Yeah, I think it goes by. She realized in that moment that the Terminator would never harm John.
That's right.
That they live in such insane times that something so insane that the Terminator would be his sort of surrogate father, that somehow that's sane inside of the insanity in which they live.
Right. So it's interesting because she's not sure, right? She's not making a statement of, like, this is what I want. It's like, these are the times, and I got to do the best that I can, but I'm still uncomfortable with it. What does this mean? And, like, the insane times, I mean, it's a great monologue.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, that she's cognizant of the fact that, like, he does need a male. You've got to have a male figure. He's got to have a protector in his life. And that she's not going to be the one to do that. She's sort of done the best that she's done the best that she can. Strong, powerful, single woman. He's done all that stuff. But then he comes along and she's like, oh, this is it. And the best example of that is the scene where later on they have gone through the first, like, battle, and they go to the gas station in the desert. They're in the wilderness, and he's standing there with the shotgun on his shoulder, like keeping watch, like a sentinel. And then it fades and it goes into sunlight.
Yeah.
So now he's standing in the light and he hasn't moved. Right. So of course, because he's a robot, but also it shows that, like, he's not going to leave. Right. He's not going to leave. He's not going to depart. He's not going to beat him or any of that stuff.
Right. All right.
So
the T-800 and the T-1000 converge on John in a shopping mall, and a chase ensues. And this is a phenomenal chase scene where, the T-1000 hijacks the semi-truck, and like you said, Arnold ends up taking it, John from the dirt bike and placing him on the big Harley Hog. It is a great scene. John and the T-800 T-800 escape together. John calls to warn his foster parents, but the T-800 deduces that the T-1000 has already killed both of them and was pretending to be his foster parent. Realizing the T-800 is programmed to obey him, John forbids it from killing people and orders it to save Sarah from the T-1000. The T-100 and John intercept Sarah during an escape attempt, but Sarah flees because the T-800 resembles the Terminator that was sent to kill her in 1984. John and the T-800 persuade her to join them, and they escape the pursuing T-1000. Although distrustful of the T-800, Sarah uses its knowledge for the future to learn that a revolutionary microprocessor at Cyberdyne Systems, made by engineer Miles Bennett Dyson, is developing and will be essential for Skynet's creation.
Yeah. What is the dog's name? Spot. How's Wolfie?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Your foster parents are dead.
Yeah.
It's dark. And when they got to the arcade, I love that he was playing Afterburner, by the way. That was a great game. And then of course, like you said, the box of roses, right? So which is kind of like a John Woo thing of like, oh, the white doves in Face Off are flying. And Arnie is now like carrying the box of red roses, and then it's like, the delicate flowers versus the gun that he has inside. Right. We see the face off between the two is interesting because the two, they fight exactly like each other. Right. So in a way, they are mirrors of each other, and one is literally like mirrored. I mean, he's liquid metal, but that we can tell that these are not human because they're like programmed. They look like two, bots fighting each other. They go through walls. He throws Arnie through the glass window, which would be the breaking of the psyche in any other movie, but he has no psyche in this. And one other interesting thing is that mall is the same mall where Fast Times at Ridgemont High was filmed. It's the same.
Really?
It's the same. Yeah, it's like the Santa Monica Mall.
I did not know that. Well, I interpreted the red roses also because what do red roses represent? Love. And so the Terminator's love is represented by the sawed-off shotgun because that's how he defends John throughout the movie.
That's a great point. Yeah. He got the shotgun, by the way, from the dude at the bar, right? Dog or whatever. I think it's not the same guy in the movie The Doors who plays Dog. But that's interesting. That reminds me. In the movie The Doors, Billy,
and obviously Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Great point. In fact, that's probably why they put it in. Because this was like we did a stream on Don Simpson. I did a stream on Don Simpson's High Concept and how it was like Top Gun was like the MTV movie. Well, this is like peak MTV movie. I mean, this is where they generated a lot of their interest in the movie was from MTV. So, and Guns N' Roses were in the Clint Eastwood movie, The Deadpool, by the way. They're in the film with Jim Carrey. But I wasn't going to say Billy Idol plays the character Dog in The Doors, and Billy Idol was supposed to play the T-1000 in this. They wanted a guy who, and it's interesting because Robert Patrick looks like Billy Idol in the sense that he's got that high hair, right? And he's got real angular face. And so what happens? The mall. He rescues him in the L.A. What is that? The L.A. sewer system or whatever?
Yeah,
like the river.
That's such an iconic L.A. Anybody who's driven around Southern California, those like waterways where flooding or whatever that it can rush away. Yeah, the sewer system. I don't know, but anybody's driven around L.A. sees those all over the place.
Get our hellscape where we have a sewer river right running through the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which by the way in the film is funny because there are abandoned cars in the sewer, like in the river sewer or whatever. That was in the movie Drive where they I think that's flooded right now, by the way. The river.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes there's more water in there than at other points.
So he hijacks the Mack truck or whatever, and then he drives it off the bridge and he's chasing the kid through the thing. That took like 3 weeks to film. They really they really did have a dude driving a truck off of the thing. And then one thing that they fixed in the redo, just nerd stuff here. One thing they fixed in the redo of the movie in the digital remastering was when Arnie shoots through the fence, right, and then rides, and then he does the jump off. You can clearly see that it's a stunt double, obviously, but it's like very visible. And so they remastered it to face swap and put Arnie's face on the on the stunt double. But that's such an awesome scene. I mean, that's
I could
so
imagine being
cool.
the stuntman to actually do that on a Harley, like just ride off something that high on the pavement. That's ballsy.
And the thing with the truck was interesting because like the last time that they did a stunt big with like a Mack truck was in, I think it was the same driver. It was in License to Kill, the James Bond movie, where Robert Davi shoots the Stinger missile and the Bond is driving the truck and it goes up on two wheels. And like the Stinger missile flies under the truck and then he goes back down. And so there's like some stuntman who can do this with Mack trucks. Right. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he rescues him in the sewer. And he's got that wraparound sawed-off shotgun, which, by the way, like when I was 10 and saw this movie, my friends and I would always play war, like in the woods and stuff. And back then, all of the toy guns looked like real guns. Eventually, they passed some law so that like squirt guns and toy guns had to look like squirt guns and not real guns because people were robbing stores.
I remember back in the day.
Yeah. And my 10th birthday, my aunt gave me a semi-automatic rubber bullet gun with a clip, like a real rubber bullet gun. But that was a toy, but it was a real rubber bullet gun. But anyway, I asked for this. We went to Toys R Us and I got a toy cap gun, sawed-off shotgun, just like in the movie, and it was like the coolest thing. So anyway, sorry, I'm nerding out about it.
No, it's great. And so and so from those scenes, we'll get through the waterway. Now John Connor, Terminator, T-800 has him. They call, foster parents are dead. He, realizes he's in command of the T-800. He can command him what to do. And so the next thing is that they have to go get his mother because now his mother wasn't so crazy where she was, mentally deranged schizo, but actually, the T-800, he is real. And now he's here. Now we got to go get my mom. And so that's kind of the next part of, the next scene is then going and rescuing her, which, as you said, kind of pulls the Hannibal Lecter. She's being interviewed by the psychologist there at the psych ward. He picks up on the fact that she was pretending to not believe in everything that she really believes in because she wanted to try to get to a lesser security, psych ward so that she could escape because she realized, I got to go get John. She realized something sort of off, sort of motherly instinct, right?
Yeah. She's like, look, I know I broke your knee with a nightstick like 2 days ago, but all that stuff was made it up. There's no nuclear war. There's no man. I'm actually sane, right? And the doctor kind of plays with her, and he's like, you know what? I think you're getting a lot better. Just joking.
Yeah.
We know you're insane, and you're staying. And then she loses her mind again, right? And then she tries to beat up the orderly. Even the orderlies are good in this because like they have like the white suits with the like big, thick, white, squeaky shoes. They all carry nightsticks, and what was I going to say? What happens she gets interviewed by the police who come in and they sit her down and they're like, what they say to her is the same thing pretty much that he was telling the people who are the other doctors.
That's important. That's how she realized that they've time traveled back. You're absolutely right.
Yes. Yeah, because he was saying like 10 years ago, she claims that there was this man and he murdered a bunch of cops at the police station and that he was coming after her. Totally nonsensical. And then the next thing you know, she's getting interviewed and the cops say, this man killed a bunch of cops in 1994, and the exact same man was spotted today at the mall. And now, what do you know about this here at Shady Acres Mental Institute, right? And the way that they have those pictures, this is kind of meta.
But that's one of the best scenes of Terminator 1 too, is the police
Yes.
Station scene.
Well, what's interesting is that we just talked about how the Rodney King thing happened with a guy with a Sony camcorder outside of where they're filming Terminator 2. So they're filming a movie beside a movie, and the two things kind of intersect a little bit. Then the way that they have the pictures is, do you remember when Arnie is thrown through the window in the mall, and there's a dude standing there with a Sony camera, like clicking the pictures?
Yes,
that's how they have. That's how they have the pictures. So the sort of same thing happens.
Really interesting connection there. I see what you're talking.
And then
what you're making.
And then the cop, and then the cop says, "This happened. Don't you want to help your son? Don't you want to say anything?" And it's like, dude, the whole time, all she's been talking about how she wants to get out so she can help her son. Like, of course, she wants to help her son, but then what happens is, like, she's being walked down the hallway, and then
so that she can
steals
escape.
The paperclip.
Yep, lock her up.
That escape scene is so bad. I mean, that's so badass. Like, she gets out, she grabs the nightstick, she beats the guy, right? And then, like, she's running away. She puts the key in the lock and then breaks the key off. Like, the little details are great. And then we see this parallel track where on the other side, there's a hallway, and we see, like, is that where we see the bad guy, or we see Arnie?
Well, we see the T-1000. So she is, I think that's, after. No, that's before. She then gets the psych ward, fills up the, like, what is it, like Roto X or something, and she gets a syringe, puts the syringe in his jugular. That's how she gets
bleach.
Gets through. Is it bleach?
Yeah.
It was like and then
some sort of blue bleach,
some type of blue liquid, and then
right up to his jugular. Yeah, and she's like, "I will pump this MFer," like, and like they're like, "Put it down," and he's like, "She's gonna do it. Like, she's gonna do it." Right? And then
and that's when then one of the psych ward guys, like, surprise her. He's in the hallway. That's when her feminist power comes out, and all of a sudden she just manhandles him, runs away, and that's when then they're chasing her. She's using the keys, door, and then breaks off the key. Yeah. She's running to the elevator. Then the T-800 again, which tried to kill her in Terminator 1, is there. She freaks out, starts running away, so scared that she runs literally right back into the people that are chasing her, which then the T-800 just, destroys them. And then, her son, John's there trying to tell mom, he's with us. And then they reunite, and she is skeptical. And that's, like you said, that whole scene sort of ends them driving away. And I don't know if it was a car or a station wagon, but they go to, like, an old... It
was a cop car.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was a cop car, which is interesting because now the cop car is helping the good guys get away.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Before, it took the bad guy to the place. And also, a couple of things. When Robert Patrick goes, because the door is locked, right? And so there's a barred door. So how's he going to get through it? Well, he's liquid metal, and so he kind of seeps through the door, but his gun gets caught. And you're like, when you're watching it, you're like, okay, but how do they explain this? And Arnie's going to explain that. But the sound of him going through the barred door, they made that sound by plopping dog food out of a can. It's kind of a whoosh, like a whoosh, pop. And that's the sound of him, like, busting through the door.
Interesting. Didn't know that one.
Yeah. And then we also see that he gains access to the place because he can mimic human beings. So he mimicked. We don't know that he's mimicked the sound of his parents yet, or did we get that? He mimicked the sound of the parents. Yeah, we did because but now we know that he can mimic the way that they look.
Yes,
he can take on their appearance. So he's kind of inhabiting their bodies. And the way they did that was they've got this fat, security guard, and they didn't have to double the guy with CGI, he has an identical twin.
Oh, really?
Which, yeah, and this is even cooler. Part at the end of the film where John, where are you? And it's Sarah Connor calling for him. They didn't have to double her either because Linda Hamilton also has an identical twin.
What? I did not
Isn't that
know
crazy? Yeah. So then we see that he when they're in the elevator, by the way, he jumps and he opens it because his hands turn into like dual bars and open the thing. And then when he's on top of the elevator, he's stabbing into the elevator with like a weird spear, right? And he's trying to get him. He draws first blood on her. He cuts her. When they get away, he's, he can run. And what's interesting about that, there's something about him running that I was thinking. I'll think of it in a minute. But one of the weird things about Robert Patrick in this is that he's so magnetic as a bad guy, because if you notice, he never blinks. None of his scenes does he blink because he's not human. And so that's one of the telltales of the kind of uncanny valley, right? Where like this character never blinks. All of the things that he does, all of the mannerisms are meant to, in a really psychopathic way, appeal to what he thinks the people will like. Like when he goes to the parents' house and he's like, "Good looking boy." Remember when he says that? Right. And it's like supposed to draw them in. But we watching it, we're like, what? This is weird. This cop just showed up, but now he's saying this and he wants a picture of the kid and he's saying that. That's weird. But in the moment, it's enough to gain the trust of the parents, of the foster parents.
So the next set of scenes is over several days of their journey. Sarah sees the T-800 serving as a friend and a father figure to her son, John, who teaches it catchphrases and hand signs, as well as encouraging it to become more human-like. Sarah plans to flee with John to Mexico until a nightmare about Judgment Day persuades her to kill Dyson, whom she assaults in his home, but finds she cannot kill him and relents. John arrives and reconciles with Sarah while the T-800 convinces Dyson of the future consequences of his work. Dyson reveals his research has been reverse engineered from the 1984 Terminator's damaged CPU and severed arm. Believing his work must be destroyed, Dyson, Sarah, John, and the T-800 break into Cyberdyne, retrieve the CPU and the arm, and set explosive to destroy the lab. The police assault the building and fatally shoot Dyson, but he detonates the explosive as he dies. The T-1000 pursues the surviving trio, eventually cornering them in a steel mill. And that whole series, that's actually a long period of time. Their trip to Mexico, and then by the time where now they're in the steel facility, because that is the next series of, that's probably about 30-40 minutes of the film.
Yeah, it's packed, and it's so good. I mean, it's so tight, like because all of the places that they go are integral to the narrative. So like, first of all, when the Terminator is chasing them and they're getting away in the car, he gets blown off by Arnie with the shotgun, but he leaves a piece of liquid metal or whatever, the hook thing on the back of the car, and John Connor touches it and like throws it away, which allows him to put an imprint on it, and so now he can mimic him, right? Mm-hmm. Also, you mentioned how like they go to Mexico. They're essentially now they're going into the wilderness.
Yeah.
And they this is where Arnie gets his name, Uncle Bob.
Yeah.
My Uncle Bob. Oh, okay, nice to meet you, Uncle Bob. Of course, Jay pointed out in the dark flop analysis that he did of Terminator, like Genesis or whatever, that Arnie goes, and you mentioned this earlier, that Arnie goes from being like the Chad Kang in this movie to being a totally soyed out like window curtain dresser named Carl in the newest ones, like literally, right? We also get the history.
Accepted that role wholeheartedly. I mean, based on how he is now.
Of course, I love soy. I've always eaten soy, right? Yeah. Anyway, so he when they're in the wilderness, they meet up with these people, and we see the picture of her. By the way, like that's interesting because it ties back to the first one. Because the only picture that John has of her is in this Jeep, where she's driving out into the desert, and then we get the same place and the same image in this one. So she's kind of recurring. She carves no fate into the thing. He says, "You're on weapons duty." They descend into the the bunker, and they get there's that great scene of Arnie like with the like Gatling gun, which is interesting because Jesse Ventura had the Gatling gun in Predator, right? Some bitch dug in there like an Alabama tick, right? So I don't like you. So Arnie gets it in this and then smiles. What was the other thing? We get the history of like you said, Dyson. In there, who's Dyson? Isn't Dyson a real scientist? Who's Dyson? He's a real guy.
I'm not sure.
But also it's interesting because Cyberdyne always makes me think of DynCorp. And DynCorp is, do you remember DynCorp was the company that they were questioning Rumsfeld about on the day before Big Nine in Congress. And DynCorp also had the allegations.
And Cyberdyne in the movie is connected to the military.
Yes, and
there's a reference to that. They're in affiliation with the U.S. military.
Yes, and DynCorp was the company that is a big MIC company that had allegations of creeper stuff, shall we say, big time. And so then the way that they break into Miles Dyson's house is interesting because Sarah Connor goes off to do that, and then like we discover that Terminator has to do all of the things that John Connor orders him to do. Stand on one foot, up high, down low, too slow. He gets real mad about that for a second, right? And the way that they break into Dyson's house is like played out in Breaking Bad. It's like the same thing that happens like with the laser pointers, and then they break in. And that's when we get the great scene. Like you were mentioning earlier about how Dyson is the big tech guy.
Yeah.
Right. He's in Silicon Valley. He designs the CPU, designs the chip. It was AI. We discovered it moved at a geometric rate. But he's got a family. He's wholesome.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think the archetype of Miles Dyson, we get a glimpse, beautiful house. We get a glimpse of him at work, incredibly respected by everybody, sort of leading the charge at this really high-tech institute. I mean, in 1991, looking at the facility he's working at, which is representing 1995, I mean, it is really high-tech looking. It's like, wow, all the security, they got to turn the keys at the same time. And then you see him at home. The wife wants him to go take the kids to the water park. And he is a man on a mission. He's a man of status. He's a man of skill. He's a man of intelligence, a successful man. And he's really devoted to his craft, but he's also devoted to his family. And so even the day that he really just wants to hammer home and again, get this thing sentient, he's really working on Skynet, all right, fine. He gives in and he goes and goes with the family and they have, I guess to go to the water park. We don't see that, but we assume that's what they do. And then we see Sarah Connor come there. Now she has her M16 with a sniper and she, with a scope on it. And she's, misses him and he, that whole scene where now she's shooting him and, his son comes in, he's got the remote control car, runs it into his foot, which saves his life. So in a way, again, the kids save him, right? Yeah. And the kids and then his family, as I was saying, he's actually a pretty sympathetic figure because, of course, once he gets the download on what he's working on, he sees Arnie's arm. Oh, that's the same arm we got, over at the lab. Now we got to stop it. But how many men in Silicon Valley that are working on these advanced technologies or some of the AIs, how many of them are family men? How many of them are committed to their wives and their children? And that, in a way, it really does. That is the number one thing in their life. I would say not many. I would say, and that's kind of the difference there, that even the kid running the remote control truck into his foot, which saves his life, it's like the family makes him a salvific figure because then he blows up the whole lab, at the end. And so again, we see a sort of self-sacrificial Christological motif there in Miles Dyson.
Yeah. Also, family inverts the family at the beginning because we have mom, dad, and son, and here we have mom, dad, and son. But the son in this listens to the parents, and in the other one, the dad, Todd, is sitting in front of a screen. In this one, Miles is sitting in front of a screen. The wife comes in from the other room. The wife comes in from the other room. In the first one, it's like, get up and say something to your son. In this one, it's like, oh, honey, I'm in here cooking dinner.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's in there working on stuff.
Yeah, and he's
right?
driven by it.
And he's driven, but he's not like, he's not a bumbling dad about it or whatever. He's like, okay, and the son comes in, and he's interacting with the family. He also breaks the archetype, or rather, I guess, the stereotype of the mustachioed African American man, which is in every 80s movie. And this is like, it's like him and Bill Duke in Predator, and that's it. Only guys without mustaches. And he's like, we can see his face. He's got an honest face. And when they come in and they put it to him that all the research that you're working on, we're going to show you empirical proof that this is the end result of it, right? Which he sees because he uses the switchblade. Come on, Billy, let's go in the other room. You can show me your toys or whatever. And they take the kid out of the room. So it's just the adults in the room. And then he cuts his arm and peels it off, and he shows him the Robo DARPA hand.
Yeah.
Right.
Robo DARPA hand. Yep.
Yeah. And it's cool because Miles believes this instantly because he has the hand. He's got the same exact hand. That's how he's been working on the program. And he has the he instantly gives up. He's like, no, we got the chip. We got the chip. We got the CPU. We've got the hand. We've got these things. And when they say to him, like, this has all got to be destroyed, he like instantly processes it. He's like, okay, this got to be destroyed. And it's really interesting how this stuff goes on. It learns at a geometric rate. It's really fun. And then he stops himself and he's like, I'll do this.
Right.
Like,
and in the same scene, we see Sarah Connor have a bit of humanity, because in a way, she's sort of very not sympathetic in a way, but her inability to shoot Miles Dyson in the head, then she has this breakdown, and then we see John Connor come, and they tell each other how they love each other. But we see her sort of regain a sense of humanity in the sense of his son, again, laying over him and saying, don't kill my daddy. And, the wife freaking out.
Do you remember the speech that she gives? This is a great speech. She goes, what do you know about life, about having something grow inside of you until you, and then the son goes, no, I'm cool. Like, okay, enough, right? We've heard, like, that's okay, but not right now, right? And she's like, okay, she's going full on, That's a good scene.
So that, to me, then they have the shootout at the lab there at Cyberdyne Systems headquarters there. Again, the sort of DARPA lab, and so that is a phenomenal scene. I mean, that sort of replaces the police scene in the first one. It's like the Cyberdyne Systems scene with the grenade launcher. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yes. It's they drive up to the Big Brzezinski cybernetic vaporwave systems, which is like, it's weird because it's kind of like a Nakatomi Plaza type of scene. It's LA, it's like mirrored, it's very 90s the aesthetic, right? Mm. But it's different. And they bust in, they try to sweet talk their way in, but then they're all armed, and man, are they armed, right? This is such an awesome scene. They break in when they flood the place. What's interesting is, like, when they break in through the thing and they have the keys and they 3, 2, 1 go, and they go through that. Well, at some point the fire alarms or whatever, the security alarms go off, but it's like CS gas instead of water. And so a cool thing they do with this is Arnie busts through the thing, gets them the masks. Edward Furlong puts his skills to use because he learned how to hack through the ATM machine. He uses the same thing to hack through the computer system because they have no key card or whatever, and they get through. We also learned, by the way, that they learned all of those skills because after Terminator 1, they state this in the movie, after Terminator 1, he spent time going around, going through various men, through various father figures for the boy. And one of those places was Nicaragua. They went to like some sort of Nicaraguan paramilitary camp. He mentions that in one scene. And so we learned that she's kind of met up with various, Green Beret figures, paramilitary figures, and then eventually she gets caught, robbing a bank or whatever, and that's why she went to Shady Acres. But when the CS gas goes off or whatever, Arnie gets them the masks, and he's able to walk through without a mask, right? Because he's a non-living and he's not human, which is really cool. And then the last thing I'll say about that scene is that one thing that I appreciate about this movie is that if you watch movies in the 80s with this kind of a scene or with cops, it's weird how, like for instance, in the 70s in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the military and the police are totally different than they are now. The way that the military and the police are then is like they're all in olive drab. They're kind of walking around with weird machine guns, like they don't know how to use them. It's kind of bumbling. But this is like the start of what I see as like the whole militarization of the police thing. And the way that the police operate in this, the SWAT team, when they come in, is exactly like, I don't know if anybody's seen this watching, but if you've ever watched the actual film of the SAS raid on the embassy in London, there were hostages taken in London at the embassy, and on live TV, they broadcast the SAS raid. Now, who knows how much of this is
right
psyops and all that stuff, but nevertheless, we see guys with submachine guns and gas masks rappel and break in through the windows and shoot. Okay, so that is like almost exactly like what we see in this. And it's almost like we're moving into the future here. Total militarization.
Yeah.
And then of course we see the new Terminator pull up on the bike with the synth bass music playing, and he's looking around. He's got his cop mirrored shades on.
Yeah, I know. That's a sick look too, with the motorcycle helmet, with the cop shades, the aviators, and then he, jumps into the helicopter, tells the helicopter pilot to jump out, which he willingly does. Clearly knows how to fly a helicopter. But I was thinking the scene too on that chase. So then they're in like the SWAT vehicle, the trio, the T-800, Sarah, John. They're on the run, and the T-1000 is chasing them with the helicopter. They literally flew a helicopter underneath a bridge on a highway. That is not CGI. They paid somebody to actually do that. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
It's probably the same dude who drove the truck.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons, the CGI effects for Terminator 2, that's one of the reasons it was so mind-blowing in 1991. It was state-of-the-art at that point, and some of the stunts were state-of-the-art. So
it's still state-of-the-art.
It is. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're at 2023, watching the helicopter literally fly under the bridge. I was like, dang, that's pretty cool on a highway. Like, dang.
And it's really cool, the aesthetic, like how the film looks, because it's not overdone with jump cuts and with, lens flares and all this stuff. It's like we get kind of a black and blue, which is interesting in terms of the pop thing. But we get a black and blue, and it's like, which is supposed to indicate like the future is dark and stark, and people are battered and blue. And that is occurring now, like in the now of the movie.
Right.
And there's no extra stuff. The technology is all within the Terminator units. And they just wreak havoc on the landscape, because that's what's going to happen in the future.
Right. And so from there, then, like I said, this chase leads to the helicopter crashing, them crashing their SWAT vehicle, switching vehicles. Now he's back in another semi-trunk full of, the T-1000 full of liquid nitrogen, and then the T-800, the trio, we'll call them. in like a little farmer's truck that I think they sell eggs or something. And anyways, that whole chase scene leads back into the steel mill, and so I can read the next section then, because that's where we left off. So Sarah and John split up while the T-1000 battles and mangles the T-800, Arnie, and deactivates it by destroying its power source. The T-1000 assumes Sarah's appearance to lure out John, but Sarah intervenes and repeatedly shoots it, pushing it toward the edge of the platform, which stands above a vat of molten steel. But she runs out of ammunition right before he falls. The T-800, having been reactivated using its alternate power source, arrives and shoots the T-1000 with a grenade launcher, the last grenade, causing it to fall into the molten steel and disintegrate. John throws the CPU and the severed arm into the vat. The T-800 explains that it must also be destroyed to prevent its CPU from serving as a foundation for Skynet. The pair hug, and John tearfully orders the T-800 to stay, but it persuades John its destruction is the only way to protect the future. Sarah shakes the T-800's hand, having come to respect it, and helps lower it into the vat. Before its destruction, the T-800 gives John a thumbs up. As Sarah drives down a highway with John, she reflects on her renewed hope for an unknown future, musing if the T-800 could learn and value of life, so can humanity. And so that is one of the sort of flips right there, is that it sort of humanizes Arnie and the T-800, and that's where we can go wherever for that whole scene there once they get to the steel mill. But the tearfulness, again, that's where I think the book of Revelation, if you read chapters 20 and 21, it talks about how God will wipe away the tears of humanity. And we see Arnie right at the end there. Now he has one severed arm, the left one, but he still has the right arm. The right arm, well, the right hand of God is Christ. And then he wipes away the tear of John Connor, saying that, now I understand why you cry. Because that was a theme throughout the movie, is asking him, why do humans cry? And so then we see Arnie again as sort of another Christological motif in regards to Miles Dyson's self-sacrifice of his own creation, of his own work, trying to save humanity. And then we see Arnold as a robot, again, sort of be, intimated that he has these more human characteristics, and now he understands why they cry, but he must be lowered back down into the molten lava, which I think is, again, this is Judgment Day, is the lake of fire, right? So these beings can only be disintegrated in the lake of fire. I think so. There's a really interesting sort of theological lens there that you could play. I don't know how much James Cameron was going there, but I mean, it is called Judgment Day. It's ironic that it ends in a molten steel. Seems like a sort of lake of fire. And then I love what you brought up earlier that I did not even think about, was the T-1000 be like Legion, and he becomes and like is screaming out as all the different entities that he inhabited like a demon would.
Yeah. The when the T-1000 was on top of the elevator and was spearing down into them, that gets mirrored in the end of the film with the way that Arnie kills the T-1000, because, like you said, he has the spear. He's almost like it's like St. George slaying the dragon, right, in a way. He's killing this beast creature. It's interesting that also, like you were saying, he has his right hand. Whereas when the T-800, when Robert Patrick gets frozen in the liquid nitrogen and then gets shattered and blown apart, we hear all the crystalline sounds.
That's a great
of
scene
him.
too. However, they did that. That was a great scene.
He's well, the way they did it was that they got mercury, and they dropped mercury down, and they saw that it didn't reform where they had it. So they put an adhesive floor down, and then had the liquid mercury like rejoin and then like glob into itself, so it would go back into the pre-programmed form that it was.
But the sound of it when he shatters, like almost incredible.
Yeah, it's like a crystalline glass.
Yeah, it's like
falling on crystal. And then of course he gets reignited unintentionally by the sparks from the dark satanic mill, Blake's dark satanic mill, reigniting him, and then that heats up his liquid. One thing about this interesting about that is when the movie came out, I remember after the movie came out, I was at home and we had a thermometer for the weather outside and it broke. And my parents were going to throw it away. And when they walked out of the room, I took the thermometer because it had mercury in it. And this is so stupid. I poured it in my hand.
Oh my God.
And I had the mercury in my hand and I wanted to see if it would reform like it does for the Terminator. And then I remember my dad walking in and going, what you got there? And I was like, it's the mercury, I want to see it. And he was like, you need to get that out of your hand. He told me, he said, you're probably going to get a hole in your hand. It's probably going to be there next week. You're going to eat a hole right through your hand.
That's one way to prevent you from ever doing it again.
Right. Yeah. So I never did that again. But yeah, when he's in there, we also had, we mentioned Linda Hamilton and her twin showing up. But then again, like he's dissolved in the lake of fire, and we have the Legion scene, and it's really amazing, like the sound of the movie, because you hear the screaming of the different characters lashing around in the liquid, in the fire.
Right.
And then of course, Arnie's character, like you said, says they need to destroy the CPU and the hand and all this stuff. But there's one more thing left, and that's me. But he can't self-terminate. So he has the mother do it, but he is descending, right? He's descending into the abyss.
Right.
And like you said, he gives the thumbs up at the end, which like is really cool, especially when you're like 10 and you're like, he loved him. He doesn't because he's a cyborg, but in terms of the sort of the esoteric symbolism, it's like, yeah, we get a kid who had a dad and he understands a father figure and he understands self-sacrifice. And the real self-sacrifice, of course, is again with Miles Dyson with the dead man switch.
Right. He's the true heroic figure of the movie. And that's where I think the Terminator, the T-800, is a sort of subversive character, not in the sense of his actual role in the movie, but in the sense of the normalization of this sort of empathetic emotional attachment to the machines as our protectors. Now, I talked about how we probably are going to have our own little, like the Jetsons, our own little AI systems that help with us in natural defense against the AIs of the world. But again, the father being replaced by the robot, by the force that's going to imprison us. I think that there's something there that, again, in 1991, people weren't just general consciousness. Again, there's plenty of books about, here's Brzezinski, between two ages. This is in like the 30s, I think he wrote this. I forget when this was written. But so people in the know knew where the state of the world was going to go, and especially the role the U.S. was going to play, especially Silicon Valley, which we see in the later ones. Again, at San Francisco, I think in Terminator Salvation with Christian Bale, explicit that the Skynet's headquarters is in San Francisco. And so we already can see the sort of motifs there in regard to the current day. But what's so subversive about it, I think, is this getting people to become sympathetic that somehow maybe the robots are going to help us. Maybe if there is a sentient AI system, that there'll be good and bad AI systems. Or again, you get this motif even amongst people who believe in aliens, that the aliens are going to come rescue us from ourselves. And in a way, the Terminator is rescuing us from ourselves, because at the end, when it is showing the highway and Sarah Connor's driving off with John, she talks about how the robot understood the value of a human life because he stopped killing people halfway through. Whereas then she says, I hope humans could also learn this lesson. Saying, so really the whole thing is that we have to stop ourselves from ourselves.
Yeah. He also has an almost a philosophical statement, I guess, early on when they're in the wilderness, because there's that scene where the two kids have the toy guns and are fighting with each other, and it's it's in slow motion, and then John Connor says, "We're not going to make it, are we?" Right, and Terminator says, "You have a tendency to destroy yourselves," which is interesting because he's in one way, it's like, no, the humans aren't destroying themselves. You, the Terminator, are there to destroy the humans. But on the other hand,
we're
the Terminator
Skynet, and that's
creating.
It moves right into Revelation, Judgment Day, because the only reason we have Judgment Day is really because of the fall itself. So in a way, we have been self-destructive, as even in a biblical Christian perspective, and that Judgment Day is the day in which that reckoning comes to an end. The self-destruction of humanity ends because those who are destructive perish; those who are with God live. And so,
yes,
go ahead.
Yeah, and Miles Dyson, real John Connor says Miles Dyson isn't the hero; the teachers are the real heroes. That's a Norm joke. Shouts out to the real John Connor out there. Miles Dyson also is it's interesting because he is also the one who created. He's the one who created Skynet, and he's the one who's creating all the death and destruction, in a sense. But he's also the one who takes the sacrifice to destroy.
And he has the money, he has the status, he has the family, the children. Like, he has everything a man, and like even right now, everything you would want, everything that even as Christian men we would work towards, he has that. And yet he still self-sacrifices for the betterment of the collective of humanity.
Yes. The one of the questions is, like, is there an eternal return thing here? Because he's the guy who's creating Skynet from the things that they got from 1984 or whatever. But who created that? Was it him in a?
That's where the whole time travel thing in the Terminator series doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, even I was watching, based on your recommendation, Terminator Salvation, and then Kyle Reese and John Connor, and then the different timelines, because now John Connor's older than his dad in 2018.
Yeah,
I'm like, what? I don't even understand how this is. This follows this.
The reason I think that movie is interesting is because of what they do with the Sam Worthington character, because the protagonist of that movie, because at the beginning of that film, we see that he's being executed. Right. He's about to be executed, but he is given a chance to, donate his body to science or whatever. So what he does he go through some sort of MK Ultra Monarch thing where they do this experimentation on him? He realizes that he is the Terminator, but he still has his own psyche, like, driving him. So then what he does is he has to get back home. Like, he goes on the kind of pseudo hero's journey back home to the base and then destroy the thing that created him, which is interesting. That movie is also interesting because at the end of the movie, Arnie is in it, but it's a face swapped. It's a deep fake Arnie, and it's done. It is done really well.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what? This is like 1980 Arnie, who is there to destroy the guy. It's pretty crazy. And also that movie is also interesting. One other thing is that "You Could Be Mine" is the song in this, the Guns N' Roses song. "We bitch slap rap on your cocaine tongue, you get nothing done," he says in the chorus of Guns N' Roses. And Guns N' Roses was like at the peak of big 80s stadium entertainment corporate rock. I mean, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 are like this sort of double statement on like absolute excess, which then segues right away into grunge. And Terminator 2 is like that as a film. And then Terminator Salvation, we get the song in that is Alice in Chains' Rooster, which is like, so we're going into like dystopian grunge world now.
Yeah. And
that song is important because Rooster is about Jerry Cantrell's dad, who was like apparently a Phoenix program's, scout sniper called the Rooster, right? in Nam. So anyway, interesting contrast.
Yeah. So that basically, I mean, what are some of the things that, anything else you want to say about Terminator, the Terminator series, Terminator 2? I mean, I feel like we basically now have encapsulated the whole movie. And here's one of the things here we can go here is talk a little bit more about AI. So I was thinking about what are some of the threats to humanity from artificial intelligence, and I don't just mean a sentient, that we're in all-out war. Certainly, we'll say that could be one of them. But, job displacement, biases and discrimination. So even with ChatGPT, I've seen people talk about, let's say, ethno-states, and there's one ethno-state in particular that ChatGPT defends, and it's somewhere around the Mediterranean. And then all the other ones, it talks about how bad this idea is. So I saw people just messing with ChatGPT to get it. And so we already see that there's biases built into the AI system, OpenAI itself, or at least, maybe it's the way it's reading what's been allowed to be on the internet, because AI, the OpenAI, the ChatGPT is basically a language-based artificial intelligence that can read all language, any blogs, anything written on the internet, it basically has access to. And so job displacement, biases, and discrimination, because if we then go to these oracles of artificial intelligence for information, how much of it can we totally trust? Because maybe it is 95% true, but that 5% that's a bias or part of an agenda. Privacy concerns, autonomous weapons, that certainly gets into then Skynet and the battle of humanity versus the machines. Power imbalances. So if the elite have an AI that's so much better than all the other AIs, how does that then change the dynamics of power in the world itself? Lack of accountability. Who is actually in control of all the AI? And then, of course, then unintended consequences that we can't even speculate or think about yet, because we don't know how causality and the casuistry of things are going to fall out. So just speculating on artificial intelligence already as it exists, there's certainly real detriments. We already see the UBI being pushed because the job displacement is a real thing. I mean, ChatGPT, based on where it is now, once ChatGPT-4, I don't know how closely you've been following some of that stuff. ChatGPT-4, once that comes out, that's going to be hooked up to all academic databases. Right now, it's just like surface level Wikipedia, blogs, all different languages across the internet. But the next level is going to be hooked up actually to academic articles. It's going to have the mind of the collective of not just like internet average stuff, but all of academia in all languages, all databases. And so that takes it to a whole new level. So ChatGPT, is certainly indicative of us moving into a time where what is the unique attribute, like what is the world we're moving into? And really, I was going to do a stream on this, is that I was going to title it, it's all about IQ. Because we're moving into a world where the only things that are going to be truly human is your own intelligence and your creativity, because all information will technically be at your fingertips. So it's only those who are smart enough to do things with that information, because everything else will be automated. So we're coming into a world, again, if they are depopulating or whatnot, that it's only, it's all about like human intelligence and creativity, where the environment of society is going to naturally select for those who have those qualities, and it's going to relegate those who don't have it.
Yeah, I think that, you've talked about this before a lot. You and Jay have really covered this so much. One of the elements of that is the fact that AI and the way that advanced technology goes in that sense is there's a satanic spirit to it, in the sense that it is it can't create, right? It's copying. It's subversive, but it takes things and it copies and it imitates, but it can't create. One of the great examples of that is, I remember in the 90s when I was in school, and there were stories about how AI, computers were, they had taught computers, the computers were sentient now because they could create literature. And immediately I remember reading this just like total trash. And basically everyone said, look at this great stuff. And it was like, and then people realized like, no, this is just William Burroughs, cut up method, where the AI is taking bits of of text from other books and just putting it all together in like a conglomeration.
Right.
And it's nonsensical and chaotic, which is really the spirit of a lot of this. A lot of this stuff is just kind of chaos, but it had no meaning. It was meaningless. And I don't mean it had no meaning in like a Dada-esque sort of surrealist way where it's like we're reading meaning into the non-meaning. I mean that it was like total trash, meaningless. And it showed that all the computer can do is just take the things that the people have given it and just like spew it out with something else.
Right.
And I think that plays a role in what, I mean, this is obvious. I'm sure a lot of, everyone said this before, but it's like the social media companies and the tech giants, it's like not making your money from advertising. It's the data collection.
Right.
It's the fact that everyone carries around. There's no need for the guy who filmed Rodney King anymore with the camcorder because everyone carries a microphone and a camera and a GPS locator.
Yep.
And it's taking all the things that you do every day and putting it into a predictive program. So that's what this thing is.
Right.
And it's also interesting that one of the things that they point out in the film, Arnie says, Skynet sold its technology, or Cyberdyne sold its technology, made Skynet, and they had military contractors. And he says this in the film. They first uploaded it on stealth bombers. The stealth bombers went through a program that was flawless. They took the human pilot out and they became unmanned aerial vehicles. And then Skynet went live.
Right.
Because it was military test. Of course, it was military testing. And they were just drones. And it's like that's the unmanned aerial vehicles, the direct energy weapons, the mass surveillance, and the fact that like, a lot of this is, kind of brave. 1984-esque, obviously, because of that's essentially what Winston does is, news speak and unperson people and take out the things that they've said. But it's really a brave new world where like these things are introduced slowly over time and people just become okay with it. And then they want to be in this and they are okay with all the things that happen. And I think that, I don't know. I think that the weird thing about technology, like looking back to when this movie was made and then later on, the way that people thought about it was the internet will be so great because the people that are 20 years after you, which is like now, will have everything at their fingertips. They can access anything. But what has actually happened, and this was obviously purposeful, is that no, they rewrote the algorithms. Now you can't find anything. But the people who have no discernment or who have forgotten, or the young people, only see what is given to them in the initial search, if they even know how to search it.
Right.
And that's fact. And there's nothing else. So that's why books are important. Yep. That's why it's important to have human contact and interaction and memory and discernment.
Right.
Because that's just the way it's going.
No, that's absolutely a great point. And regarding to, like I said earlier, I do not believe in the potential of strong AI. Strong AI, for those of you who don't know, is the belief that you basically have a conscious AI, artificial intelligence system. And this has to do with questions of what is mind and what is consciousness. Now, people who believe that mind is an epiphenomenon, it's a phenomenon that happens due to brain activity. So because of the neural network of the brain and the immense interconnectedness, the theory is of these people who are emergent understandings of mind is that it just emerges due to the immense interconnectivity. And so if the cybernetic system also mimics the brain in the sense of the immense interconnectivity, it will then take on what we consider a mind and a sort of self-awareness. And so some of the people that believe that this is going to happen, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking before he died, the founders of OpenAI, Ray Kurzweil. Those are a few. Now, the other idea is what's called weak AI. So, and the most famous, or one of, there's many people that would talk about this, but for me, the philosopher John Searle, the analytic philosopher of UC Berkeley, probably the most famous philosopher still living, famous for discussions with Foucault and Derrida and all this different stuff. But John Searle has what's called the Chinese room thought experiment. And this is the basis of what he considers why AI will never be totally conscious. And the idea is, imagine there's just this box and there's a man inside the box, and people can take questions that are in Chinese, and they can go up to the window of the box and they can put these questions into the box. And then in another window on the other side of the box, out comes the answer to the question that they put in. But the man inside the box just has a program system where he can just match up the characters to a book or some sort of resource. And so all the questions already have the answers pre-programmed. And so he's just taking one to the other. That is not understanding Chinese. That is a program that is programmed to have a reaction due to an input. And this is the basis of what's called weak AI. And that weak AI can only be a programmed system. It will never take on full consciousness or full sentience because it doesn't have whatever consciousness is. And this is called the hard problem in the philosophy of mind. And that's why the philosophy of mind has basically stopped since the 70s, because nobody can really come to an answer of what is consciousness. And most people then in the philosophy of mind, that's where you get into the debates of AI systems and how they're going to work. So I wanted to lay that out there, that the Chinese thought experiment is one reason of what you're getting to is it's not really thinking. It's a program that has immense access to massive amounts of information that the algorithm allows it then to sort and connect. And you put in a question to ChatGPT, and then it can spit out the right response, amalgamating so much different sources of information from books and articles and all this stuff. And that's going to grow. But therefore, I think the real question is, what is the limits of a weak AI system? Can you create, for example, once ChatGPT, right now it's just language-based. Once it turns audio-based and video-based, meaning that it now is video and audio, and it has access to everything on the internet. It can hear it, it can see it, and it can read it. Right now, it can only read it, and it's limited to what it can read, which is getting ready to expand with ChatGPT 4. So what are the limits then of a weak AI system? And even if it's not conscious, if there is a power of people that are really in control of this, this weak AI system that is incredibly powerful, that's just as bad. If there's a handful of global elitists, maybe there's 100 people and they have ill intentions for the planet, and they have their hands behind this incredible weak AI system. Weak AI just meaning that it's not actually sentient or conscious, but it's a tool. It's a weapon. And that if then the people can access the AI, and then they can access the fighter planes and all the cameras in the world and your cell phone and your microphone. The AI doesn't necessarily have to be sentient for it to be evil. The people that are utilizing it can be the evil behind it. And that's where also then you can get into speculations like I do about the devil and all that type of stuff. Anyways.
That's interesting. I mean, that makes me think of John Nash and game theory, and sort of like creating models for asymmetric warfare and like that. Remember that? Have you ever heard of that game Polybius? Who knows if this is real? This is like this is like one of those rabbit holes, like from the old days of like this sort of, they put a game called Polybius in an arcade, like in Terminator 2, and the kids played it, and it just it's essentially like a social media experiment, but at an arcade. And they created, like, it was a form of like, actually utilized game theory put into practice, where it modeled all of the different variations of the war games that are put out. And then they said, the X-Files guys came in and collected the thing every night. I don't know, whatever. But it also makes me think of, that the internet is like, all this stuff is like, it's information and it's variations of information. And then we take that in entertainment, we have the metaverse, right? And all this nonsense. But that, like, the internet doesn't do ideas. It can't create. Right. It just replicates and takes the things.
It always needs input. And we are the creative
right.
point to put the input in,
right.
even like the AI art, which is incredible. I don't know if you've seen, and again, I don't know if you've seen the AI girls, again, the porn girls, like just on Twitter. Obviously don't search this stuff. I only saw it on Twitter, but it was the AI renderings of like women, like in there, like these really small. It looks absolutely real, like the indentions of the skin, the shadows. It doesn't look like the AI art that people have as their thumbnail.
Yeah.
No, this looks exactly like it's real.
best AI art that I've seen, the only one that I found, really interesting was somebody made a video of Breaking Bad as a 70s Japanese gangster flick. And that's pretty clever because it is Breaking Bad, the whole five acts of Breaking Bad, but like with these Japanese characters. I mean, like it's a real life Japanese film, like it's supposed to be. But it's like the first time I watched it, I was like, "Is this a real film?" I mean, it's very good. It's real weirdly believable with like a weird Breaking Bad synthwave soundtrack to it. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's the other thing is AI music is getting really good. So that's where I said it's like the world we're moving into is just selecting for human intelligence and creativity, and this is the real left behind. Is people are going to get left behind who aren't, sort of catalyzing these features of our own humanity. If you are dumb and uncreative, you're going to be gullible to what's getting ready to come, and you're going to get left behind your job. You're going to be on UBI. You're going to be, have your stabby card, and you're going to be relegated to eat the bugs because that's just the world that we're moving into right now, and it's moving really fast.
One thing, I also Sam Hyde brought this up in a recent stream about AI, and somebody asked him a question about AI and, is my job going to go away? Well, it's like, if you're if you work in McDee's or one of these places, yes. Or, even, teachers or some of these, we can see them being, that kind of thing. But jobs that require your hands-on with a hands-on skill, like, for instance, you're like a welder. Mm-hmm. Okay. At least now, those things are not being replaced because there are too many moving parts. He says this in Terminator, by the way. They say, can he replicate a gun? Why doesn't he just make a gun or a bomb and kill everybody? And says,
the bomb, too many moving parts.
Yeah, too many moving parts. Those things have too many moving parts. They require gunpowder and ballistics, and so he can't replicate those things. But like, they have the DARPA dogs and all that stuff, but it's like skills that require intuition and human experience and thought and ideas and judgment. Whereas like, how do I weld this pipe? How do I fix this line? Where we at least right now, it's like you can't get a robot to get up there and manipulate the small parts with the ideas. Yes, you could do that in a factory. They've been doing that for years, like making cars and stuff, but not on something that is somewhere out there. And so like those sorts of labor, that sort of labor, which is going away anyway, by the way, as far as like, there are hardly any young people in the jobs. So if you're a young person, and there are two homies of ours that do this right now, as far as this kind of work, I won't say what, but that kind of work. And they are the only young people, they're in their 20s and 30s, that are in that job. Everybody else is like 50 plus. Those guys are going to retire, and there's going to be nobody else. So you're going to have to like fulfill that position and take a higher pay,
right? Because
they just can't get AI. They can't get a alloy DARPA bot to get up there and weld the pipe. You have to have a human being doing it. And that Breaking Bad thing is called Breaking Bad is an 80s Yakuza film. If anybody wants to look it up, it's pretty interesting. Smash that like, everybody. Send super chats into our homeboy here, Church of the Eternal Logos. Also, one more shout out. Got to give a shout out since we're covering Terminator. I can't help but give a shout out to Isaac Weishaupt out there, because he wrote books called Use Your Illusion and Use Your Illusion 2. So got to give our homeboy out there, Isaac, a shout out.
Shout out to him. Yeah, so I think exactly it. There's going to be skills. That's why, as a man, you got to find a skill. Certain skills are going to go away. Certain ones are not. Anything that is incredibly repetitious is probably going to go away. Welding, which is going to be unique depending on which weld, what the problem at hand is. Those things are going to be harder for AIs to deal with. So, prepare, just becoming useful, and then, I think a lot of people don't realize, how fast this is all moving. And, I imagine as they speculate 2020, right here, the fourth industrial revolution, 2023 is going to be a totally different world, guys. It's only 2030. I meant 2030 is going to be a totally different world. It's only 2023. And think of how much is already on the move, the digital currencies that are coming at hand. So arm yourselves with knowledge. Arm yourselves with a good connection with God. If you're connected with God, then you don't have a lot to worry about, even if they kill you.
The movie takes place in, the thing is supposed to happen, 2027, but there's agenda 2030.
2029, the year before the Great Reset.
Right. The Johns Hopkins event was supposed to be, said that it was supposed to be 2025, but COOF was 2020. So I guess these things are always changing, but, like you said.
Who knows? Yeah, all right, looking at some of the super chats, guys, I want to say thank you all for here. Please smash that like for everybody who's still here. We're going to dive into some of these super chats. First super chat comes from Nicophorus, throws in $5 and says, thoughts on Arnold going from bodybuilding and masculine icon to huge globalist who goes along with all the narratives. And so me and Bazed were going back and forth regarding this. And it's so sad because Arnold, I like lifting weights, bodybuilding, and still his physique, who he was in the 70s and even the 80s, incredible. He was Chad. He became a movie star. He was physically fit. And then the COOF, promoting the vaccines, wearing the mask everywhere he went, scared to death of the COOF, and really is promoting all the globalist stuff. And I saw that somewhere in the 90s, around the time of his success with like the Terminator, he became friends with the Rothschilds. And I can't help but think, he's probably financially in a place where he's, obviously set for the rest of his life. And he's now on the side of the team that we're obviously in opposition to. And he's become such a soy boy and the things that he argues for. And another thing, he's against guns. Americans shouldn't own guns now. I don't know if you've seen this. He thinks that it's good that we should have our guns taken away, and that Americans are dumb and all they care about is religion and guns. And it's like, dude, Arnold, what happened, man?
Of course, take your guns. We want to take your guns and sit in the jacuzzi. We're going to sit in the jacuzzi. I can smoke anywhere, but you can't, And it's like, yes, Arnie's dad, and then he's married to a Kennedy, and the whole our child thing. And really, when you think about it, I mean, I remember when I was in lower school, as we called it, in private school, not one of you puppies. No, I was in school, and I got a presidential fitness badge, which was Arnie's big thing. He was Reagan's fitness ambassador, right, to schools, and he promoted physical fitness. And that's great. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's great. But it also goes along, it's in line with what was happening in the 80s, right? And big 80s, big hair, big money, big body, big shoulder pads. And then, of course, he was governor of California. He's part of the political system. And it's no surprise that big, I don't want to say it here, but the big thing when COOF came out is like, you're going to be one of the ambassadors. And he's like, don't think, just do it. Do it now. Do it. Kill me. Yeah. Which is very apt. So yeah, it's shocking in the sense that he's so awesome, like in this movie, but he's Hollywood.
He's Hollywood.
It's culture creation and creating an image, and it's going along with all the political. I mean, the guy became governor of California, which is interesting because he's like in the footsteps of Reagan,
right?
Who was governor of California and then president, and he's like it's supposed to be a Reagan.
Yeah, I saw online when I was just doing some research that the first Terminator, 1984, is when he, like you were saying, became some sort of he had garnered a friendship with Reagan and was like the fitness ambassador and all this different stuff. And so that was in 84 after the first Terminator. Yeah. And then after the second one, which was a massive hit, it seemed like he really started to, there's photos taken him with various members of the Rothschild family and European elites and all this different stuff. And now he's just a sellout establishment figure who, at least not to live, whatever he says, probably do the opposite.
Yeah, don't forget he was also in the movie where he was a pregnant man.
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
Remember? I mean, he went from Predator, which is again like the perfect movie, but it's also like a big MIC, DARPA movie, with a kind of an alien demon, to being in the pregnant man movie. So this Terminator 2 is peak Schwarzenegger. I mean, it never gets better than that. Um, you know, uh, Last Action Hero is kind of again like a meta thing with it's got a guy, the villain's a left eye, Illuminate confirmed guy. And he was in End of Days, right, where he plays like Satan comes to Earth, and it's the end of days, it's the Judgment Day. He was in what's the one where the dude is flying the Harrier jet and it predicts the Big Nine event? He's in Eraser, and Eraser's a DARPA movie. With direct energy weapons.
Yeah.
Right. But what's the one with Jamie Lee Curtis, you guys? The big one in 1995 that he did that it has Bill Paxton in it. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, the Terminator 2 is peak.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyways, thank you, Nick and Forrest, for the $5 super chat. Truly appreciate it. By the way, guys, Bay's YouTube channel is in the video description. Make sure to click that. Give him a sub for his great work. Next super chat comes from our man, Dr. Vagisil. Throws in $3 and says, Terminator 9. Bazed Lit evil brother comes back from the future as a boyo book burner. To stop you guys from breaking down the Hollywood spells.
Okay, we stomp on them in Skawooshim.
Oh, a bayou. I'm sorry, it's a bayou book burner. I think down in the sticks there. Yeah, in the swamp.
No, he not gonna burn the books. He gonna put them right there in the swamp in the bayou down there on Lake Pontchartrain. I know. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Vagisil, for the $3 super chat. And he sends in another one with a $1 super chat and says, Arnold wishes a Terminator went back in time to read him Ecclesiastes to help him understand having sex with his ugly maid is something King Solomon would slap him for, since he threw away a beautiful marriage to Maria Shriver. Shake my head.
Yeah. That whole thing is very weird because that seems to me to be some kind of humiliation ritual. I mean, not to say that it didn't occur, but that's very odd. And who was his son Patrick married to? He's married to some model, but he was with like Jennifer Lawrence when she was making Hunger Games. Anyway, that's a really weird. I'm
not
weird
familiar
event.
with his son.
Yeah,
is he? I know one of them. The one. Just because he's in the bodybuilding, that he has one son from, I think it's from The Maid. And he's the one that actually looks the most like Arnold, where he has like some sons with, I don't know if it was Maria or another woman. They're kind of like fat and chubby and soy.
Patrick Schwarzenegger. I think Maria is his dad. He's a big, he looks a lot like Arnold. Yeah, he looks a lot like
Nice. Next super chat comes from our man Theoria Zone. Throws in $5 and says, thanks for the great breakdown. Well, thank you very much, Theoria Zone, for the $5 super chat. Appreciate it, brother. Next one comes from Day Jyer. Throws in $14.99 of a currency. I think that may be Australian.
Australian.
It says, this is just such great analysis. Love your work, DPH and BLA. Well, thank you so much, Day Jyer. Appreciate it. And then next one comes from Pim Orsos, another good brother here in the community. Throws in $20 and says, I like Terminator 1 and know that I'm older, but it's close.
No, that's great. Thank you for sending that super chat to our homeboy here.
Thank you, Pim. Appreciate that, brother.
That is a great film, but Terminator 2 supersedes Terminator 1 in every way. It's just such a great movie. And it's people recognize it as like one of the few great sequels, but it really supersedes the first one, in my opinion. So that's a good super chat, though. Let me turn on this light.
Yeah, no problem. And then our good sister Kristen throws in $5 and says, great show tonight, fellas. Amazing analysis. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. God bless you and the family. Hope you all are doing well And thank you so much for the support, and glad that you guys enjoyed the stream. You know, BLA, we tend to have a good time whenever we get on here and just kind of riff about movies.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Really appreciate you. Slow boy whiteboard out there. Everybody.
Yes, God bless her and the family. They say your audio's okay. Next super chat comes from Rachel Wilson. Shout out to our sister Rachel Wilson. And go find her, Rachel Wilson, on YouTube. You got to click, at least how I found it was search filter channel, and then she'll come up, and then click her. You guys just did a video over on Team America, didn't you? You and Jerry and Rachel?
Yes, that was so awesome. Big shouts out to Rachel, based homeschool mama, for having Jerry and I on there doing Team America World Police. Yes, go to Rachel Wilson's channel, give her a sub, and watch that video, because she's going to be popular. So she's going to be doing big things in the future.
Absolutely. And I'll be on her channel here in a couple weeks. So really looking forward to that as well. Shout out to you, Rachel. She says for $5, totally mind-blowing analysis as usual from you both. Thank you so much, and keep up the great work. Well, you keep up the great work, Rachel. God bless you and the family. Shout out to Andrew. Andrew will actually be on Thursday night. We're just going to have a back and forth. We're going to learn a little bit about who Andrew Wilson is. I'm going to ask him some personal questions. So this should be a fun stream Thursday night. Next super chat comes from Hides in Mud, throws in $1.99 and says, "Sir, is that a copy of Heat 2 behind you?"
Yes, sir. Yes. Here's Heat 2. This is the Michael Mann.
You also do the pasties like Jay does.
The Jay Dyer trademarked. You can get these at the Jay's Analysis shop. No. But yeah, I guess pretty standard practice for literary explication, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I just do that. Usually I mark up the book. I didn't in that one because it's it's brand new. It's a first edition copy. But if you want to check out my analysis of Heat 2 and the film Heat, please go to my channel. Shameless plug here. Please go to my channel at Bazed Lit Analyzer and check out that analysis. I do literary analysis. I try to do when I do movie analysis, try and base it in literature, and we're just trying to rise, shine, and grind through the canon of literature. And we got a bunch of stuff coming up, and just finished a bunch of streams, and we just keep on grinding. So yes, it's Heat 2 back there.
I'm a ruler, underline, and then write in the margins kind of guy with the tags. I'm all about these things.
Yeah.
I tag them up, and the different colors mean different things for them. I got a whole system. I may have to go to the pasty notes.
I do those sometimes. I got those. I do those as a side.
I just like the aesthetic
on the side
myself.
Yeah. I do those on the side, but I also mark up my books pretty heavily. So
yeah,
that's the way I remember them.
Me too. Me underlining them and then writing in them. That's how I remember them.
People call that active reading, folks.
Next super chat comes from our man and one of our premium members, Thomas Henderson. Guys, if you want to join our premium member group, which we will be meeting this Wednesday, it's really a bunch of great guys all around the country that are definitely based and red pilled, and they get what's going on. We meet every other week, and we'll be meeting this Wednesday. If you want to hop in there, go to the website and join, and you can do so by becoming a member with this link right here. I would greatly appreciate that. The best way you can support my work, and there's 3 different types of memberships, so you can do whichever one you feel called to be a part of. Thomas Henderson for $10 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another." Proverbs 27:17. Something that can't be replicated by either AI or liquid metal. Amazing stream. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Cheers to you. Yes, thank you so much, buddy.
Great comment there, Thomas. I'll read that again. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. In a way, maybe that's why when people, as we're becoming more a-communal, we're becoming more, in a way, ruled by our technologies and our smartphones, people are in fact becoming dumber. Illiteracy is going up, IQs are dropping, pattern recognition is not so hot as it may have been or was at one point in the world. So I think, as I do my research, I think about the 1800s, the 19th century, and how, the Napoleon invasion of Europe, early 19th century, and just the state of technology and the life and the elites and the people in the know, how much they read, how much they saw, and they could see the end of that century and how it's going to lead into the Industrial Revolution and everything's going to be mechanized. And it's like, man, how many people do we have that are even at that, whether we agreed with them or not, just that level of intellect? I mean, the people who rule us are dumb as hell. I mean, we got Bill Gates telling us about jibby jabs and diets, and he's fat and got, man tits. It's like, we don't have any heroes. Like, we're not even ruled by competent people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I think about the film that we just analyzed when you say iron sharpens iron, and maybe this is going too far, but maybe that's why they don't have two metalloid Terminators in it, because one's liquid and one's solid, so they can't sharpen each other in a sense. One, they're at odds with each other in terms of they're very material because they're both non-human, right? So I don't know.
No, I didn't think about that, but that's a good point. Anyways, thank you, Thomas, and I look forward to chatting with you Wednesday night. God bless you and the wife, brother. Next one comes from our sister Amptown1, throws in $1 and says, sending the rest of your money, BLA, for McDonald's, it looks like.
Right. Thank you so much, Amptown. Amptown, big supporter of me. Really appreciate you. She helped me get my McD's nugs the other day. Listen. If you want to, you can support DPH anytime. You can join his website. You can drop him super chats via Streamlabs. You can drop him sponsored streams. I got my idea for sponsored streams from our homeboy here. And if you want me to do a sponsor stream, go to my links on my page.
Yep.
And give me some ideas. A lot of people have done that, and that's a big support for me. And boy, do I need it. I really need it right now. So if you want me to do that, please give me some ideas and do that. And you can support me anytime. And please, everybody here, this is your channel. Everybody here knows you, but please share these streams, you guys, because DPH does incredible work. We all know his work, but a lot of people don't. And just put them on to the stream and let them watch some of these streams. Because his work is amazing. His research is great. And we're very thankful for him.
Well, I appreciate you as well, brother. Again, your link is in the video description. You do incredible work. That's why I like having you on. Generally my channel is not so much an interview channel as, I like to bump around and pass ideas. And so that's why I like having you on. I like having Rachel on. I love having Father Deacon, Dr. Ananias on, because we get to sort of revel in new ideas and conversations. And so it's always fun chatting with you, and your knowledge on literature and films is incredible.
Thanks. Thank you.
So anybody who wants to, again, support our buddy Bazed Lit Analyzer, his link is in the video description. Click that link. Go give him a sub. Watch his streams. Participate and help him out as well. Next super chat comes from Dr. Vagisil for $1 and says, in my early days, Arnold came in for my services one time for a casting couch session and went wrong with Weinstein, allegedly.
Okay.
Well, there's Dr. a lot there. Vagisil, thank you for that little inside baseball. We do appreciate that.
Thank you for your services.
Next super chat comes from Amptown1. And she throws in $1 and says, I did grab a membership, though. Well, thank you so much, Amptown1, for grabbing a membership. Again, I actually know her in real life. She lives here in the area. And so she wasn't at church this last Sunday, which I'll forgive. But she has been coming to church regularly. So it's been nice to meet her. God bless you and the family as well, Amptown1. Hopefully you're able to make it this coming Sunday. And so, again, thank you for becoming a member. I truly do appreciate it. And that's the best way you can support me is by becoming a member or sponsoring a stream We're throwing some love. Next one comes from Genghis Khan, throws in $4.99, and it just says Michael Caine. So I think that one's directed for you.
Michael Caine. I didn't mean to blow the bloody doors off. Look, Master Wayne. When I was in Burma, there were rubies the size of grapefruits, Master Wayne. So I got
Oh, that's hilarious. Thank you so much for the love, Genghis Khan. Another good brother here in the community. He's always helping me out and showing love. I really do appreciate it, Genghis Khan. Thank you so much, man. And it looks like the last and final super chat comes from Alt Monarchist, throws in $5 and says, "Hey Logos, bro, nice guns. I just got back from the gym. Inspiration for me to do better." Well, that's good, brother. You know, gotta keep it, keep it fit, keep it strong. You know, since Arnold's no longer on our team, we got to fill that role. So I do appreciate it. Alt Monarchist, God bless you, brother. Really appreciate the $5 super chat and the contribution. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it. BLA, is there anything you want to say? Man, there's already 2 hours and 38 minutes, almost 3 hours already. That's crazy.
Yeah. Good times as always. Thank you so much for having me again. Really appreciate it. Hope to do another one in the future.
We got to do more of these. These are fun, and I think and we get a lot out of them. I mean, just like what we did last time, it was Scrooge and It's a Wonderful Life. People love that. I got a bunch of messages from people love it. Like, we just got to do, find classic movies and good movies, and because we kind of we have totally different realms. Like I do not know film history very well. Literature, okay. And then, what I know, I know. What I don't know, I don't know. And you know a lot of things that I don't know. So it's like, I think it's refreshing when we get together.
And I don't know philosophy. I mean, I've taken philosophy courses and I've read philosophy, but I don't know philosophy. I'm a total slow boy at philosophy. And you really, I get a lot from you. We've covered a pretty wide range, right? We did Transcendence. We've done Terminator. We've done It's a Wonderful Life. We did Hocus Pocus, right? We talked about Moby Dick in our first one. So hopefully we keep on going with these. Really, I love being here. I love you having me here. Again, shouts out to all my friends out there, to my family. My sister was in the chat. Shouts out to her. I love you so much. Shouts out to all my friends out there. Shouts out to the mods who are always wonderful. Shouts out to JD and Jamie over at Jay's Analysis, to Tristan Haggard and to Chase Haggard. And shouts out to our homeboy Jerry out there exposing powerful lies, all of our friends and family. And great times, good times.
Yeah, good times, man. God bless you. Again, go click the link in the video description. Go follow BLA. Support his work. Show him some love. Again, he does really great work breaking down books, literature, movies, all that type of stuff. I will be back potentially tomorrow or Wednesday breaking down the book Man and Technics by Oswald Spengler, the famous German who wrote The Decline of the West. And so that should be a good stream, hopefully, God willing. And then Andrew Wilson will be on Thursday evening to really just get into who is Andrew Wilson and his journey up to the sort of host of the Crucible. So we'll be chatting about that. What streams you got coming up? You got any sponsored streams on the horizon? What's your next stream?
Yeah, I got a bunch of sponsored streams coming up. I'm doing a sponsored stream on the films of Wes Anderson coming up. I got a bunch of sponsored streams coming up. We just did Bret Easton Ellis's Glamorama and Zoolander. We just covered Herman Hesse's Steppenwolf, which is where Between Two Ages comes from. It's where Brzezinski got the title. I've got a stream coming up soon on Ender's Game, a sci-fi book stream with our buddy over there, Andy, at BPF at the Crucible. And we've got more Shakespeare. I just covered Hamlet again and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead. More films, films based on books, more Cormac McCarthy, more classic literature. Got a whole bunch. It never stops. So that's what I got coming up. And thank you to everybody.
You got your hands full. I got some sponsored streams as well. One will be on, the Man and Technics, and then a full breakdown of Rosicrucianism, the tradition The People and the Theology. So that will be coming probably in a week or so. I got to dive in. That's going to be a considerable amount of research. But, oh, there you go. Yep, The Rosicrucian Enlightenment. Yep. So that book will absolutely be a reference for that stream. So anyways, brother, thanks for coming on. God bless you and the family. We'll definitely have to do it. You know, I think people have been requesting a monthly stream. Maybe we should start playing on that. A monthly stream, a breakdown. We'll figure out something hot, something popping, something classic, and then and come together and do stuff. So God bless you. Wish you nothing but the best for your channel and everything that you're doing. I will be back either tomorrow or